Good evening, good evening, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night to whatever part of the world you are at. We thank you so much for tuning in once again at Truth Be Told TV. Happy Monday, you all. When you all come in, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, so that when we go live, you will be notified. So once again, please hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe to the channel so that when we go live, you will be notified. So we are continuing from the live we did on Friday. For you all family, once again, I hope you all had a great day on today, as well as your weekend was pleasant. So shout out to Vita, Mr. Bass, peace, love, and blessings, y'all. So I'm gonna jump right into it because we have a clip. Excuse me, I think one of them is about like 2 hours and another one maybe 30 minutes or so. But Mr. Bass has the content already pulled up. I'm gonna bring Mr. Bass up and then we're gonna get right into it, you guys. Mr. Bass.
Peace and blessings. How are you?
I'm blessed. I won't complain. How you doing, Mr. Bass?
Actually, I'm doing pretty good today. These new gummies are working out for me good. I'm kind of winding down now, but uh, I am actually feeling a whole lot better than I have in.
Listen, Mr. Bass. I said
Mhm.
I was gonna go Saturday. However, I got caught up with the family. We had went out to eat and everything, so I didn't even go get it. Listen, Mr. Bass, like I really need to go get some tomorrow. I really just need to relax because it's like so much. It's like why in the hell do I always have to be Wonder Woman? Is like I ran away from it for 5.5 years, but I actually did run away from it. As long as you have kids, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I'm praying for you. I know your plate is full.
Yes, Lord. It's too full. It's
Mhm.
overrunning.
Yeah,
But
that.
God,
Go ahead.
I said, but God, Mr. Bass.
Oh, I know that's right. I know that's right. The first clip is actually a little over an hour, and the second clip is almost 3 hours. And that's the one that is the most important because it's the rebuttal to what's being said. But nevertheless, I'm gonna speed them up a tab, and if it's moving too fast, y'all let me know, and I'll put it back to normal. But I'm just gonna put it on 1.25 so we can move through a little quicker, if that's all right with everybody. But I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We want you to know here at Truth Be Told TV, we operate in love, and in everything that we're bringing it in love, but we're gonna bring the truth.
Amen. And I do apologize, Mr. Bass. I sure thought that one clip was 2 hours, the one with RZA.
Yeah, that one is. It's almost 3 hours.
Okay, so you're not gonna do that when you're gonna do the hour and a half clip?
It's an hour clip. We can do probably half of RZA's, and then pick up the other half on Wednesday.
Okay, that's fine. Because so the first one you're gonna go off into how we was discussing it. So you do the first one and then roll off into that. I'm with whatever you with. It's fine with me. Go ahead, handle your business.
All all right, then. Without any further ado, we're gonna get started. Let me mute up.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlemagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
That's right. The CEO of the Anti-Defamation League.
Jonathan Greenblatt, welcome.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
How are you, man?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Yeah, blessed, black, and highly favored.
There
Doing
you
pretty
go.
good.
If you all don't know what
Let's start off. What is the
I'll break it down
CEO
to the
of
Mr. Base with the ADL,
Well, the
Anti-Defamation League. Defamation League is. If you all don't know, the Anti-Defamation League is the ADL. Can you break it down for Mr. Base? Also, we do not own the rights to this. Shout out to these people, Charlemagne, Sherilyn D. Gala, or whatever. But yeah, break it down to him real quick, Mr. Base, and you may proceed with the video. I'm going back on mute.
Yeah, the everybody ought to know by now that ADL is the Anti-Defamation League, and they're mainly there to stop hate towards the Jewish community, and they supposedly supposed to be helping with anti-black stuff and stuff like that too, but we don't see that. And what I want to say, I'm not going to say because I don't want the video to be taken down for anything that I said, because it's important information here. You pay attention to Mr. Greenblatt. And one of my questions was, why did he come straight to the Breakfast Club and there's nothing really on mainstream media about it? So, but
Because
anyway.
they're in the bed with him, but keep going.
All right, now watch it now.
It's the truth.
Excuse me. Yes. So anyway, pay close attention to him and listen to him, and you'll hear what is and what isn't true. But there is a rebuttal to this is really, really good. All right, so I'm gonna move on, and so let me mute up and go over to the other page.
What do you do?
What do I do? So the Anti-Defamation League, let's just step back. It's the oldest anti-hate organization in the United States. It was founded in 1913 after a Jewish man was lynched. He'd been falsely accused of a crime, wrongly convicted, and ultimately the mob tore him from his jail and they hung him from a tree. And while the corpse was still hanging from the rope, they all gathered around, the town did. They had a barbecue underneath the body. They took pictures and they turned the photographs into postcards.
Sounds familiar.
I was going to say, like, lynchings happen to young black men and black women very frequently in the South. This was the first high-profile lynching of a Jewish man, and a bunch of Jews said, we got to do something about this. And so they founded an organization they called the Anti-Defamation League, and they wrote a mission statement that was pretty amazing, because 100 years ago, Jews did not have, economic resources to speak of. They did not have much social capital. And the mission statement they wrote in 1913, we still use it today, was that the purpose is to, quote, stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all. Not stop the defamation of the Jewish people, then not stop the defamation of Jewish people and maybe stop it and justice and fair treatment to all, which, we all talk about intersectionality today. We think struggles are connected today. But 110 years ago, when the Jewish community was vulnerable and they were weak and they didn't have any kind of power or influence or anything, the idea that they would fight for themselves made sense. They would also fight for others. That was an audacious, outrageous idea, but it has animated this organization for well over a century. So whether it's, this organization made the country safer for its Jewish people and safer for black people, safer for LGBTQ people, safer for immigrants. You know, my predecessors filed amicus briefs in Brown v. Board of Education, put people on the buses for Freedom Summer, March with Dr. King, long before. I mean, today we talk about Dr. King, and he's a hero, and we got a holiday. He was a rabble rouser.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a risk taker. And when ADL stood with him in the 1950s, like, it pushed a lot of people away, but we thought it was the right thing to do. And I'm blessed, like really, really blessed to stand on that legacy now.
Let's go back to 1912, right? Because, you know, a Jewish man got lynched, but I'm sure plenty of black people got lynched prior to that. So,
Lots.
you know, why didn't, you know, Jewish people step up prior to say, hey, man, this is wrong that all these black people are getting lynched?
I'm sure Jewish people did, but the Jewish community didn't create an organization, you know, like ADL before then.
Gotcha.
So that doesn't mean that individuals didn't speak out. There are many Jewish who were involved in the abolition movement. There are many Jews involved, you know, in all aspects of the civil rights movement over the decades.
Because it makes me think about, you know, when you don't, how they say, you know, this happened to the Jews and I remain silent, or this happened to this group and I remain silent. This happened to black people and I remain silent. And then eventually they came for us. That's what it makes me think about.
It is a lot like that. And, you know, like, look, ADL has not gotten it right every time over the last 100 years, that's for sure. But on some of the most big and important questions of our time, when it really was a risk, I feel proud to be part of this organization.
And what does the CEO of the ADL do?
So basically, I do three things. So number one, we protect the community. We track anti-Semitic incidents. We help train law enforcement so they understand what hate crimes are and how to protect communities, black, brown, Jewish, gay, etc. And we monitor the extremists. So I got a team of analysts who 24/7 are tracking right-wing extremists, white nationalists, armed militia groups, hardcore anti-Zionists, radical eco-fascists, all these kinds of extremists. Like just 2 weeks ago, we had a situation in Penn Station, you may have seen, where the FBI and the NYPD apprehended 2 men with bulletproof vests, guns, knives, swastika armbands, and rounds of ammunition. That was based on a piece of intelligence that an analyst sitting at our Center on Extremism provided to the FBI. So last year, we gave over 1,300 tips, again, like making sure that white supremacists and other kind of sovereign citizens and radicals don't commit acts of violence. So number one, we track incidents, and I'll come back to the incidents. Number two, we advocate. So the short term, it's protecting the community. The medium term, it's about improving the climate. And we lobby in Washington. We lobby in state capitals. We litigate. Right now, we're trying to bankrupt the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. And we speak out in the court of public opinion, too. So advocacy is a big part of what I do. And then thirdly, we educate. Because, you know, you sort of can't fight hate in the long run if you don't win hearts and minds. You can't arrest your way out of hate. You can't litigate your way out of hate. So we are one of the largest providers in America of anti-bias, anti-hate content in schools. We reach 3.5 to 4 million kids in schools, middle schools, high schools, every year. And so what'll happen is like a black high school player will be hazed on a football team, or an effeminate teenager will be bullied for being gay, or a Jewish student will have a swastika carved in her locker. And a parent or a principal or whatever, they will bring in ADL, and our content is about fighting anti-black racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, all those kinds of things.
Let me ask you a question. I'm talking to Jonathan Greenblatt, for everybody just tuning in. One thing that I always have a problem with any group of people is a lot of times we don't have the conversation, so we don't know what hurts, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what's bothersome. We don't know what to say, what we can't say, what's inappropriate, what's defamation, and all that.
Yeah.
So the first thing I just want to talk is what are the terms that shouldn't we say, or what are the terms?
I think you're saying what exactly is anti-Semitism?
No. Yes. Well, that's part of it too. So like, you know, let's say Kanye says Jewish people have all the power.
Let's not use him. No. I would rather use me as an example.
Okay, well, let's say people say Jewish people have all the power, or, you know, Jewish people run Hollywood, or Jewish people run the music industry. These are the things that we've been hearing recently. Explain to us what those terms mean to you, and is it hurtful? Is it painful? Is it not? Is it, you know, like, what is it to you? Like, if you ask me, you know, the N-word, how does that feel? And this, that, and the other, we can define that. But how does that feel to you? And what can we say? What can't we say? What is foul? What is not foul? You know?
Well, look, DJ Envy, I'm really glad you asked the question. And like, I'm just going to share, you know, Charlamagne and I have been talking for years now. And a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. And sometimes we do call things out, but I believe that you call people in before you call them out.
Absolutely.
And I don't believe in cancel culture. I believe in counsel culture. So I know, like coming on this show, there are people in the Jewish community who are going to criticize me. But I think we've got to engage with each other.
And vice versa.
And learn.
Yeah, our community's going to be like, why y'all got him on the show?
I'm sure you're going to hear it. There are a lot of people who don't like me. People on the far right, people on the far left, people in all kinds of communities. Because I think, we call it out, whether it's Kanye West or Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene or sometimes Ilhan Omar, we will call it out. Or SNL or Amazon, we call it out. So that being said, what do we call out? So again, our core mission, if you will, is protect the Jewish people. That's our core purpose. So anti-Semitism is the threat. So anti-Semitism is kind of an irrational, let's say, hatred of Jewish individuals or institutions because they are Jewish. And anti-Semitism is interesting if you think about it relative to other forms of prejudice, because I think anti-Semitism, it's like a conspiracy theory. Like it's about the way the world works. So the Jews did this to me. The Jews have too much power. The Jews are the communists. The Jews are the capitalists. The Jews control Congress. The Jews want to kill Christian people, Muslim people, black people, whatever. It's this warped kind of idea that shapeshifts relative to time and place. I mean, it's described as the oldest hatred. It's been around thousands of years. After the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem by the Romans and like torn from their land, and they lived in diaspora as a small community in Europe, in the Middle East, in parts of Asia. And these Jews continued speaking Hebrew. They didn't assimilate into the mainstream population. They continued their own religion. They didn't adopt Christianity or Islam. They continued their own dietary rules. They didn't adopt what the mainstream did. Jews don't believe in conversion or proselytization, so they stayed small. They didn't really grow. So the upshot of that is when the church, like in Europe, needed someone to blame the Jews. When the kings needed someone to blame those Jews. When the caliphate needed someone to blame those Jews, because they were always there, they were always different, they were always living on the margins. So flash forward to today, anti-Semitism shows up in different ways, often like characterized by a series of myths or tropes. So for example, the Jews run Hollywood. Look, it is certainly true that there are a number of prominent Jewish people in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. But the idea is that the Jews run Hollywood is nuts. There's no cabal of Jews who are manipulating things. But the idea that Jews and power shows up over history, right? Many people know about something called the Protocols of Zion, which was a forgery written over 100 years ago, that there was a group of Jews who were trying to run the world. Hitler used that to justify, the genocide of 6 million Jews. And so when you say Jews run Hollywood, Jews run the music industry, Jews control Congress, or sometimes, by the way, it's the Jewish people, sometimes it's the Jewish state. Israel controls Congress. Israel, the Zionists run the media. It's the same stuff. And why is it a problem? Like somebody said, well, I would love if people thought that my community ran Hollywood, but like this has led to harassment and violence. So earlier this year, we had the hostage taking in Colleyville, Texas. Do you gentlemen remember that? January, a guy from the UK, mentally disturbed, of South Asian descent, Muslim, had been radicalized by ISIS propaganda and came to the US because he wanted to free an ISIS terrorist who's being held in a prison in Texas, and thought the way he could free this woman was to go find a synagogue because the Jews control Congress. And he took 4 people, a rabbi and 3 people, hostage in a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. There was an 11-hour standoff, which I know because as soon I was at home, I had been to synagogue in the morning. I was at home and I got a call from my head of law enforcement who said, sit down. I hope you're sitting down. We just got word about a hostage taking at a synagogue outside of Dallas. And we got the call because the FBI called us because we track extremists. And one of my analysts was on, I think, a Signal, like in a Signal chat that morning when someone said, turn on the live stream, because you could see it because the services were being live streamed. This crazy person thought somehow that Biden would listen to the Jews. Now, as it turns out, after 11 hours, the hostage were able to free themselves. The FBI shot and killed this man because he came out with his weapon. But interestingly enough, the next day when the rabbi was on CBS and they asked him, what do you think? The first thing he said was, I just want to thank the FBI, law enforcement, and the ADL for the training that I got that helped save my life. So when we talk about what is anti-Semitism, it's a crazy, ISIS radicalized person coming from the UK, thinks the Jews have too much power. It's 2 white supremacists getting off a subway train at Penn Station because they've heard that they wanted to go shoot up a synagogue. It's Black Hebrew Israelites this weekend. What today's Monday? Tuesday.
Wednesday.
It's going to air on Wednesday.
Sorry. So it is over this past weekend in Staten Island on Sunday, a Jewish man who he must have been Orthodox because you could identify that he was Jewish, and his son were shot by a young man with a pellet gun as they came out of. And so when he was asked by the police, they said it was a hate crime. He said, how could it be a hate crime if I'm a Hebrew? This is the kind of fiction that Black Hebrew Israelites say that white Jews, quote unquote, aren't really Jews. So anti-Semitism can, if you will, show up as people thinking that white Jews aren't Jews. It can show up as white supremacists. It can show up as people saying, like Kanye, by the way, Kanye got ejected by Elon Musk off of Twitter last week. And Elon says because he put an image up of a Jewish Star of David with a swastika in it. I could tell you there are rallies, anti-Israel rallies every week where they say Zionism is Nazism, that Zionists are committing genocide. I've seen that image a million times. But these are all manifestations of what I will characterize as an irrational hatred of the Jewish people. And look, Jewish people are the most victimized religious minority in the country. 60% of all the religious-based hate crimes target Jews, despite the fact that Jews are just 2% of the population. There are only 7 million Jews in a country of 350 million people, but they're the most targeted. And the anti-Semitism is up. In 2000, we've been tracking anti-Semitic incidents at ADL for 45 years. 2021 was the highest total we've ever seen. It was a 34% increase over the year before. 2,717 incidents. Now, every one of those, my staff investigated and verified everything that we report. And so that is triple the number of incidents that we had in 2015. So think about that. Over 300% more. And I mean, if you guys go to church or your listeners go to church, you can ask yourselves, do you have armed guards in front of your church?
No, we need to, though. I felt that way ever since the incident happened in my hometown in Charleston, South Carolina.
And we should talk about that, about what ADL's doing about that. So let's come back to that. But literally every synagogue in the United States has an armed guard in it. Every synagogue in the United States knows how to do lockdown drills and, you know, live shooter drills. We are very used to our synagogues being firing ranges, and there's a lot of fear that comes from that.
What you name? Hold on. What you name?
The term Jews, right? Is that a term that can be said? Because at one time
you couldn't say that. I thought you had to say Jewish
people. Yeah, you can say Jew.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Language evolves and changes relative to like cultural norms. So I think of myself as an American Jew because my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor, he was a Jew in Germany, the only country that he ever knew until one day my great-grandfather fought in the First World War for Germany. The only country they ever knew until one day it turned on them, destroyed everything they ever loved, made them enemies of the state, and it pretty much incinerated their whole family in Auschwitz. So that German Jew came here. Never would have guessed, by the way, that when he was a young man, that one day his grandsons, like me and my brother and my cousins, would be born in America. My grandfather never could have guessed that in his 20s. Flash forward, my wife is an Iranian Jew. She came here as a political refugee in 1988. If you ask my father-in-law, I mean, they're very Iranian. They're Persian. They speak Persian. They eat Persian food. They work with other Persians. It's a whole different, very deeply Middle Eastern kind of culture. If you had asked my father-in-law when he was a young man, he would have guessed, of course, his grandchildren will be born in Iran, the only country they ever knew until after the Islamic Revolution. The Jews became enemies of the state. They destroyed everything they ever loved. And they forced, again, my in-laws and my sister-in-law and my wife to come here as refugees, which they did, like I told you. And so I don't take for granted, based on the experience of my Jewish grandfather from Germany or my Jewish father-in-law from Iran, that my grandchildren will be born here in America. As a Jew, I can't afford that luxury. If I want them to be born here, and I desperately do, we got to fight for what we have.
So you can say Jew is what you say.
So you can say Jew. Now, I'll also say that a lot of, when we talk about what language matters, it's all about context. So when, you know, Nick Fuentes, you know, Donald Trump's dining companion, uses the term Jew, he probably doesn't mean it in the way, like when I say it. And it's like you mentioned the N-word before, like when a black person says, a black person has a very different meaning than when Nick Fuentes uses at dinner with Donald Trump. So a lot of this is about context. If you call me Jewish, that's just fine with me. If you say Jonathan's an American Jew, that's just fine with me too.
So when we go back to the anti-Semitic conversation, because a lot of the things you named are blatant anti-Semitism, but I got labeled anti-Semitic because I said, you know, after the Nick Cannon situation, this shows that Jewish people have power, and I can't wait until black people have power, because we can't even get the people who kill us fired, in reference to the cops who at the time who hadn't been charged for killing Breonna Taylor. So why is that considered anti-Semitic? Because that's coming from a place of reverence.
Yeah, I get that. And so I think that's some of the complexity of this. Now, number one, I tell you at ADL, like we are very, very, very hesitant to call someone anti-Semitic unless there is a pattern of behavior over time. You might say something that's anti-Semitic. You may say something that's offensive, intentionally or not, but it's up to us to explain why. Like, I can't assume that you understand my pain. I got to explain it. So, like, I don't know the specifics of who said exactly that, but what I would say
I said that, yeah.
No, but who ascribed that to you and said, Charlie, is an anti-Semite? I don't think that's right. And I think you've shown a willingness to engage and to be open. You've shown it with me, and I appreciate that vulnerability, and I hope I show it with you and with your listeners today. Now, all that being said, again, the trope of Jews and power, like simply when you say, I want to have that kind of power, You might not mean it in some conspiratorial way. That may be how some Jewish people heard it.
Because even in hip hop, right, it's always been, you know, you got to have Jewish people in your corner. You know, like, you know, remember 50
In a good way or
in a
bad
good way. In a good way. Like, you know, it's a thing to say, like, you know, I got some very powerful Jewish people in my corner. I don't know if we're saying it because of the stereotype of Jews having power, or just that they're powerful and happen to be Jewish.
See, this is what's tough about it.
Mm-hmm.
Context matters. Intent matters.
Mm-hmm.
There can be an offense even accidentally. Like Kyrie Irving, I don't think was trying to be.
No, not at all.
I think he was just ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the Kyrie Irving situation, right? You know, Kyrie Irving got suspended. There was 5 things he had to do before he was playing basketball again. But I also ask about like Amazon for having that film on there. You know, I don't feel like Amazon got much of that fire.
So I'm going to tell you, we are working on that, because you're pointing something out, DJ Envy, that's incredibly important. It's not just about what the people say, it's what the platform does. It's not just what Chappelle says, it's what SNL does or NBC does. It's not just about what Kyrie tweets, it's about Amazon hosting it. So look, we've launched a whole campaign against Amazon. We announced on Monday we're working with the German government because Holocaust denialism, and that movie is offensive in part because it says that white Jews invented the Holocaust, that it didn't really happen. That's not true. Let's just put that out there. I don't think I really should even need to. But Holocaust denialism is illegal in Germany. That movie is available on Amazon Germany. So we are now working with the German government because Amazon is breaking the law. I also had, we worked with members of Congress, had about 3 dozen members of Congress write a letter to CEO Andy Jassy and to the chairman Jeff Bezos. We're also worked with all these different groups in the Jewish community to write a letter. We've sent tens of thousands of emails. So I'm not going to let up on Amazon. Not at all. And I was at a conference last week where Andy Jassy, CEO, said, you know what, it's a slippery slope if we take this down. I don't think so. Or at a minimum, maybe he doesn't want to take it down, and I think he should put a disclaimer on it to say the kind of things in here are not true, and here's why they're problematic. And like, look, I've talked to Andy. I've talked to their leadership. We will help them with that. Again, the goal here is not to cancel, it's to counsel.
Now, you also didn't mention Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah.
For years, comedians have made jokes about everything under the sun, right? If you watch it, Live in Color or whatever it may, it could be LGBTQ community, it could be Black people, it could be white people, it's Asian people. When is a joke not funny anymore, where it's a problem? Because some people find Dave Chappelle's jokes funny. I'm sure some Jewish people find Dave Chappelle's jokes funny.
Yeah, the criticism was he normalized anti-Semitism. As a person who doesn't always know what is considered anti-Semitic, I didn't know what he normalized.
So let's talk about that. So first of all, I would say that I give always, as the head of ADL, a very wide berth when it comes to comedy. I mean, and Dave Chappelle is an equal opportunity offender, right? White people, trans people, Black people, Jewish people. So there's a lot of Asian people for sure. And so is SNL. Like, SNL's making fun of people all the time. White people, Jewish people, Black people. And I pretty much don't say boo. But what was problematic about what he said are a few things. So number one, keep in mind, as you probably know, because it's been reported, he did a different monologue in the rehearsal. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, I heard that. I read that.
He didn't do that. So right there, that's a little bit of a tell, because that's not what you are supposed to do. That's not why Lorne Michaels does the rehearsal. You're supposed to test it out. And I think he knew that it was going to be too hot or too controversial, and they might tell him not to do it. So right there, number one. Number two, look, he literally said the problem wasn't what Kanye said. It's that he said it out loud. That's what he said. And on the heels of the stuff that Kanye was doing, and on the heels of all the kind of animus around the Kyrie thing, when he said that, you know, sometimes you don't know in comedy whether it's going to be whether it's a punch or a punchline. This just felt like a punch. He did that thing where he pulled out the piece of paper and read it at the beginning. You all saw the monologue.
The apology, he denounced his anti-Semitism.
I did not, and he said it in a flat, like, you know, in a flat monotone. And he said, that's how you buy yourself some time. So that was kind of funny, but it wasn't, when again, it felt less like a punchline and more like a punch. So by saying the problem wasn't what Kanye said, just that he said it out loud, that hit home. Again, the fact that there are some Jewish people who are Hollywood executives doesn't mean the Jews run Hollywood. And this myth of power has led to deep problems for Jews. But there was something else that he said that also really, I thought about our conversations, that really hit me. When he basically said, look, you know, Jewish people have suffered. And he acknowledged that towards the end. But he said, don't blame Black people for your trauma. He said it kind of like that, I'm paraphrasing. Like, no one was doing that. I mean, I've gone after Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump, plenty of other people on the right who are white. I've gone after plenty of people on the left who are white. I've gone after, I shouldn't say gone after even, but called out people like Candace Owens and people like Kanye and people like, and others. I mean, to say that we're blaming Black people for the trauma really, really hurt. because I think it was really, really wrong.
Yeah, I think sometimes people feel like in regards to anti-Semitism, Black people get labeled, but then suffer more consequences for it than other groups. You know what I mean? Nothing seems to happen to Donald Trump. Nothing seems to happen to Tucker Carlson. But other Black people that get labeled anti-Semitic, they lose things.
Lose everything.
I hear you. I mean, I think about Myers Leonard last year, or 2 years ago. Myers Leonard, he was a forward for the Heat who was caught. She was streaming on Steam, playing like, I can't remember what game he was playing. And he used a real pretty offensive term toward Jews.
Shooting game, I believe.
Which, yeah,
I think it was shooting. One of
I
those
think
shooting
so. I think it
games,
was like, Call of Duty or something.
I think it was, yeah.
And we called him out. The Heat dropped him, hasn't picked up by another team. Right. So he pretty much got canceled. By the way, we've worked with Myers over the years. We worked with him right away after that. He's done some good stuff with us, calling out hate on video games since then.
Is he Black or he's white?
He's white.
He's white. Okay.
He's white guy. He lost his whole career.
But let me ask you, when somebody does something like that and says something wrong and disrespectful and he loses everything, that's kind of like cancel culture.
It is, which is why we called him out when he said it.
Because it doesn't give you a chance to apologize and to make good of what you've done. Because
And what's
your life and career is done.
Look, man, and what's really a shame about Myers, he's a good guy. He's a young guy who's tried really hard. And I don't want to speak to his talent on the court. Like, I don't know what the Heat front office thinks, or the other teams, by the way. But it's sad that he hasn't landed somewhere, as far as I know. Again, we've worked with him. I think he's a genuine good guy. But sometimes people do get canceled, and I don't think it's right.
Do you ever look at that and say, "Damn, we did that. Like, we took his career, we took his life," even though it's something that he said.
Well, I was going to get to that because me and you had a conversation one time, Jonathan, about Kyrie, and it was after the list of demands came out, which you said y'all didn't have anything to do with.
Nothing to do with.
And one thing you said in that conversation was you were going to call the Nets and tell them that they should let Kyrie back play,
which I did. So jump into Kyrie for a second. I mean, I'll just say, answer your thing, but like, I think a lot about the fact that ADL is a deeply respected organization. So when we say something, it has a kind of resonance, and I take that responsibility really seriously. I do not do things lightly. I do not do things flippantly. And again, I try to call people in before we call them out. Now, when there's something really public, like what Myers did, like, that's just objectively wrong. But I'm proud of the fact that we've worked with him since then, featured him in programs, tried to live. Now, so that's what we've tried to do, because I do think a lot about what you said, EJ, and it's real. Now, you were asking me about just now. I'm sorry, I lost my
Kyrie. We were talking, and you said you called the Nets.
Oh yeah. So, like, again, I think when I saw that movie, Kyrie's not Myers Leonard. Kyrie's one of the most well-known players in the game. My boys have his jersey. They wear the Nikes. So he is like a cultural phenomenon. So when he did this and then didn't seem to show any contrition or any interest in any contrition right away, that's problematic. But we work with the Nets and his family and the Player Association and the league and his friends to try to work this out. And then after he said he had another pretty terrible press conference and the Nets suspended him, they said this is what I got a call from them and said, this is we're gonna have him do a bunch of things. Would you be willing to meet with him? I said, of course I will. And I've said that, by the way, since the very beginning. I still haven't met with him. Spoken to his dad. I've spoken to his stepmom, who's his agent. I've spoken to his friends. I haven't talked to him. But I would talk to him today if he wanted to have that conversation. Because I think he has, since the whole kind of debacle, demonstrated again and again that he's really sincere. And when Joe Tsai and Adam Silver say, we met with him, and the man has never expressed an anti-Semitic thought, and he really wants to learn, like, I want to help him learn.
Is there anybody that you wouldn't speak to?
Well, Mel Gibson and I aren't exactly going to have, coffee at any time soon. I mean, I think people who are unrepentant, people who show no willingness in a genuine way, that's a bridge that I won't necessarily cross.
Now, did you see the article in Tablet where they said when it comes to Jewish people, the ADL does more harm than good? What do you think of that?
There are people in the Jewish community, like, here's the ugly truth. There are people in the Jewish community, particularly those who I would characterize on the far right, who think ADL is too liberal. And then there are people in the Jewish community, what I'll call on the far left, who think we're too conservative. I get accused of being an apologist for Donald Trump, and I get accused of being, like, obsessed with Donald Trump. I've come to expect that. And so, when you call people out and you do it consistently and clearly and you take no prisoners, but you do it in a way which is about how do we move forward, people are going to hate on you. And, like, I just think that's part of the job. If I listen to my critics, Charlemagne, like, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, they said the ADL is a partisan attack machine fueled by corporate cash and oblivious to any real suffering of Jewish people.
That's great. I mean, look, tell that to the rabbi in Colleyville, Texas, who credits us with helping save his life. Tell that to the millions of kids who we educate every year. Tell that to the thousands of people who we help after they've been victimized. I mean, I think that's baloney. But, although I'm going to be honest with you, like, I'm accustomed to getting criticized, I take all the criticism seriously. I think very hard. because like I don't want to be on the right or the left. I just want to do what's right, not wrong. So I don't let these people distract me. I don't let them daunt me. Like I said, I never get out of bed in the morning, but I always think there's room for improvement. And I'm always trying to listen to people that I don't agree with so I can hear where they're coming from.
Well, what is your thoughts on private conversations sometimes, right? Every household, to somebody that's listening right now, said something foul or racist or something that they considered a joke, might not have been funny, but it stayed in their household, right?
Yeah, sure.
But sometimes those household situations get leaked and people lose everything over a household situation, especially over something that I know most of the people listening has said something or something funny that they thought was funny that might not have been funny. What is your thoughts on that? Because it's nothing that necessarily wanted to say that they wanted to get out, but it's something that could have been taken out of hand. I think it was.
Do you have a specific like example in mind?
There was one situation, I can't remember what it was, so don't quote me. I remember he was walking into his house and it was on a neighbor's Ring camera and it was released and he just got everything he got was taken from him. But the individual, I believe at the time, was doing things for different communities, but he just said something. What is your thoughts on things like that? Because it's still cancel culture.
I mean, yeah, look, like I said before, I think you can offend people even if you don't intend to, but that's why you got to counsel, not cancel. That's why you got to bring people in rather than push them away. So there's been a lot of examples of this cancel culture where professors or business people have lost everything because they made a comment or they maybe did something wrong, like legitimately wrong. But I just think, in the Jewish tradition, we have this concept called teshuvah, which is about repentance. And acknowledges the fact that, I mean, we're human. Like we may be made in the image of God, but we're not God. And so all of us sin, all of us err. And teshuvah means we can all repent for what we get wrong. So that's pretty much where again, there are those, you ask me, who would I not talk to? They're the unrepentant, unwilling people, and I don't want to deal with them. I just don't. But that is a very small fraction.
Have you spoken to Kanye before? Was that ever a conversation?
I was asked would I meet with him, and my answer was yes.
Even now?
Yeah, admittedly, that was before.
Okay.
Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
And before Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Right.
Like he seems unwilling or uninterested in any kind of real sincere conversation. And by the way, you asked about private conversations. Like I've seen him post these text messages with his friends.
Right.
So like that's kind of hard for me to reckon with. And so I think look, I will say that I typically approach people like with the benefit of the doubt. I assume people have good intention, not ill intention. So it's hard to go talk to somebody like that when he has a pattern of behavior that demonstrates ill intention.
And what about Elon Musk? Like, now that he says that he's on Twitter, is saying that hate speech is shot up, 41% against Jewish people, 61% against African American people. Does the ADL attack him and his organization and things like that? And how successful are you guys with doing it?
Elon Musk. So let's step back. So I would tell you that we've been fighting hate for, again, over almost 110 years. Facebook is the front line of fighting hate today. And social media is a super spreader of anti-Black racism, anti-Jewish hate, anti-Asian hate, etc. So literally, we opened a center in Silicon Valley back in 2017. And the woman who runs it, she's an ex-Facebook executive. I have software engineers and data scientists working at ADL. We're monitoring all this stuff. And we're working with all the platforms, by the way, Google and YouTube and Meta and Twitter and Reddit and Steam and Amazon, all these companies. From like Apple to Zoom, we work with all of them, okay? That's relevant because we've been working with Twitter now since it was founded. We worked with the old regime, working with the new regime. I wasn't a big fan of the management at old Twitter. Like old Twitter has been like a hellscape for a long time.
About Jack Dorsey? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, and we work with his staff on almost a daily basis, certainly a weekly basis. And oftentimes there are a lot of issues. Now, Elon, I think Elon is somebody who wants to do the right thing because he wants to make the business work. And if it remains a hellscape, the advertisers won't take part in it. They don't want their brands. Brand safety is linked to user safety, right? So they don't want, Procter & Gamble and McDonald's and Coca-Cola, they don't want their brands up against like white supremacist hate speech. Now, all that being said, so I have been critical of some of the things that Elon has done. And at the same time, like I'm talking to Elon and we're trying to work with them. I want him to get it right because whether we like it or not, Twitter is the public square. That might change at some point in time, but the public square cannot be, again, a firing range where Jews and other minorities are targeted and victimized. To your question, DJ Envy, we have seen in the past few weeks, anti-Semitic hate speech has gone up. The number of takedowns has decreased as a percentage. We've seen some really awful people get back on the platform, like neo-Nazis and such. I'm hoping Twitter will take them down. We're working with them to try to get to that outcome. And I hope that Elon will get it right.
What's the difference between free speech and openly inciting hate and violence?
Well, a lot. Incitement and threat. Freedom of speech isn't the freedom to slander people, right? And
because he keeps saying free speech, but all I see is, like hate speech.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And even if hate speech is part of free speech to a degree, like you make decisions, right? Every day who you bring on this show.
Mhm.
You do.
Mhm.
You make a decision, and you do that because you respect your audience. You've got an integrity to this program, right? And you don't want to give a platform to some of the worst elements. Like Twitter can do a much better job, make sure it doesn't platform the worst elements. Because I don't think we should confuse freedom of expression with the freedom to incite violence against, again, Black people, Jewish people, or any other minority.
You know, the ADL is an anti-hate group.
Yeah.
But it often feels like the ADL seems to have, it doesn't have the same passion for anti-Blackness as it does anti-Semitism.
That's a fair question. I mean, we were created after this lynching to protect Jewish people. That's why we exist. And so at a time when anti-Semitism has reached literally an all-time high, it's fair. We're putting a lot of resources on that. We put a lot of resources into fighting extremists, right-wing extremists who want to kill Black people and Jewish people. And this is something I think we should talk about, because these right-wing extremists, they're the ones who are rejoicing while they perceive Black and Jewish people are fighting. They're the ones who want to see Kanye and the ADL or Charlemagne and whomever going at it, because they deeply, passionately hate both of us. So we have, I think there's a lot of shared values between the Black and Jewish community. And by the way, just shared people. There are plenty of Jews of color. There are plenty of African-American Jews that I know. But in addition, I think we have shared values. And unfortunately, we have common enemies. But let's come back to what you asked about. We do a lot with groups like the NAACP, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Urban League, Color of Change, Lawyers Committee. At the national level and at the local, we have 25 offices across the country. In all my offices, we're working with, Black-led organizations to fight anti-Black racism, to be a part of legislation, to be a part of initiatives. And when we launched our campaign against Facebook a few years ago, Stop Hate for Profit, I did it with Derek Johnson, the CEO of the NAACP, and Rashad Robinson from Color of Change. But let's come back to, on this issue of, are we doing enough on anti-Blackness? And what's your expertise and how are you helping our community? Because you said before, Charlemagne, you would like to see armed guards in Black churches. And that's actually not a crazy idea.
I don't think so, not in this day and age. I feel like that about schools too.
And we saw the shooting in Charleston, like you mentioned, in 2015. We had a shooting in Buffalo earlier this year at the top supermarket. We've had arson attacks against Black churches. Earlier this year, we had bomb threats phoned into HBCUs. So this past September, it's only a couple months ago, the ADL and the Urban League launched a new effort called the Solidarity and Safety Coalition. And we included that, like the National Association of Baptists and the United Negro College Fund and a bunch of other groups. ADL is going to share what we've learned about monitoring extremists and protecting houses of worship and faith-based institutions and kind of other important kind of civic entities with the Black community, the Asian community, the LGBTQ community. We're going to share what we learned. We can do more to fight anti-Black racism and hate. And this is one very direct way we can do that.
I want to go back to something you just said. You said, you acknowledge there are Black Jews. There are African-American Jews.
100%.
Some people think saying that they're labeled anti-Semitic. What is the difference between saying, hey, which is a fact there are Black Jews, and what y'all consider anti-Semitic in that conversation?
I don't know. Anyone could, the fact they're Black Jews is just a statement of truth. I don't think that's anti-Semitic. I think let's also acknowledge that Judaism is a wide spectrum, right? So you have Orthodox Jews who speak Yiddish, who, eat strict kosher and observe the way they do. And then you have very Reformed Jews who, like me, I'm conservative Jewish, actually. I have a kosher home. I go to synagogue on Saturday mornings. I observe all the holidays, but I don't wear a kippah, for example. And then there are other Jews who say, I would never set foot in a synagogue, but they feel culturally Jewish. They identify as Jewish because it's complicated. It's a religion. It's an ethnicity. It's a culture. It's just not something you can just say is about, like showing up on a Saturday morning. So with all that said, there's a range of practice and observance. So there are plenty of Black Jews who go to what you might call traditional Jewish synagogue. And there are other communities like the Black Hebrew Israelites. Now, there's a range of practice even among Black Hebrew Israelites. There's a large community of them in Israel who identify as Jewish in a traditional way. And then you have the guys in Times Square who observe in a way that's not so traditional, I would say.
They would say y'all aren't Jews. It would say that, what they say, white people are not the original Jews, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
And look, they're entitled to their beliefs until that justifies shooting Jewish people with pellet guns on Staten Island. Or like, this is December. 3 years ago, December 2019, 2 Black Hebrew Israelites went into a kosher supermarket in Jersey City and killed 3 people because they said they weren't real Jews.
Wow.
Shot them cold dead in a kosher supermarket. So again, you're entitled to believe whatever you want, but I think we need to recognize that rhetoric can have real world consequences.
Can we talk about Hollywood again? Because it is true that Jewish people founded Hollywood, but there's a reason for that.
They did. Right? Some Jewish individuals, like called the Jewish entrepreneurs, who couldn't get, look, at the turn of the century, Jews couldn't get hired at law firms. Businesses wouldn't hire Jews. Jews couldn't buy homes in many places. The reason why we have so many of these medical institutions like Mount Sinai or whatnot is Jewish people founded them because Jewish people couldn't get treated medical institutions or hospitals wouldn't treat Jews.
Mhm.
So Jewish people had to create their own entities, their own subculture. Again, there's a lot of commonalities with the Black experience in this country in this regard. And so when they couldn't get jobs, entrepreneurial Jews went to the West Coast to build out this new industry that now we call Hollywood, the entertainment industry, the motion picture industry. And so as an industry, some Jewish people helped to create it. They had some success with it, but at the risk of stating the obvious, there are 10 zillion people in that industry who are not Jewish.
Mhm.
I mean, the vast majority are not Jewish, but they have had some great success there.
I only got a few more questions. Where does the stereotype that Jewish people control media, where does that come from?
It comes from these old tropes about Jews and power. I could show you white supremacist literature that's like 10, 20, 30, 40 years older from today that says Jews control the media. Now, are there some Jewish media executives? Sure, there are. Do Jews control the media? Not as far as I know. If they did, I think I get much better coverage. I mean, really. I mean, there is no cabal of Jews in an organized way. I mean, we can't have a hard time run our own synagogues. I mean, there's no cabal of Jews running anything. Now, there may be Jewish people who have had some success, but Jews don't run Hollywood any more than like it's say Jews run Hollywood. It's like making some stereotype or some generalization about Black people in sports or, Latino people and something or other. I don't even know. It's just it's not right. And it may sound like a compliment, but the reality is when you see Jewish people being taken hostage, Jewish people being shot and killed, it doesn't feel like such a compliment.
What do you say to people who say that, y'all are proving somebody like Kanye, right? Because Kanye says, hey, Jewish people have all the power, and then he loses everything.
Well, look, the insidious nature of anti-Semitism and these tropes about power is Kanye can say these things. Jews have all the power, they're controlling everything. And if we don't get him, we don't deal with that, the myth spreads and it takes root. If we do address that, and there are consequences, he says, proves my point. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And we're kind of stuck. We can't ignore it because it has consequences. And if it gets addressed, he says, see, proves my point. But I mean, that's just the insidious and ugly nature of anti-Semitism.
How does the ADL handle anti-Black racism from Jewish people? For example, if somebody in Brooklyn calls you and says, hey, I'm being discriminated against by my landlord, and the landlord happens to be Jewish, how does the ADL handle that?
Well, look, I mean, we address it head on. I think about a situation in Boston a couple of years ago where 2 young Black girls had their hair in cornrows at a private school. The private school said, you're in violation of our dress code, and suspended them, expelled them. So those young Black girls, their mom or one of the moms called the local ADL office. So what do? We brought in the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and together we took on that school. We filed a lawsuit and we won.
I was going to ask, at one time, especially in Brooklyn, there was a lot of tension between Jewish people and Black people.
Definitely.
Right? Hasidic Jews at that, I believe. Yeah. How have you guys calmed that down and created some type of peace in there? Because I don't hear about it like I used to when I was a kid.
I think there's still a lot of tensions there, to be honest, DJ Envy. I mean, the issues in Crown Heights, I think that's kind of what you're referring to. I mean, that way precedes my time at ADL. I didn't even live in New York. It was, I think, maybe 20, 30 years ago. But there's still a lot of tensions. And that often happens. I mean, Van Jones has talked about this. I've heard him talk about this. A lot of times there's fighting and there's friction because we're together. And that's what happens when you have communities living in close quarters. That being said, one of the things that I want to do and that the Nets announced was we're going to create community conversations coming off the Kyrie thing. So the Nets are going to sponsor. We're going to start in Brooklyn and bring together young Black boys and girls and young Jewish boys and girls and get them talking to each other. I think so often our communities don't interact, don't engage, don't hear one another, and I think we can improve upon that. So these community conversations that we do, I'm hoping we're going to start in Brooklyn and then we'll expand to other cities. Like there's again, our communities have such a deep history. I am proud.
A lot more similarities than we do differences.
Way more similarities. And there are those people who want to divide us. There are those people who want to tear us apart. There are those people who want to instrumentalize Black people against Jews, Jews against Black people. Like we cannot allow that to happen. Again, we have shared values and we got common enemies. But more than that, I think we have a legacy. Now, look, Jews didn't come to this country on the hulls of slave ships. Jews don't have the history of 300 years of enslavement, 100 years of Jim Crow. We don't have that history in this country. Being a Black man in America has a kind of cost that being Jewish doesn't have.
And Jewish people have been able to assimilate in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can walk down the street and you necessarily know that I'm Jewish, unless, on the other hand, I'm an Orthodox person. And then I am more likely to be assaulted just because you can see that I'm Jewish than any other white person. And Jews have our own trauma, which is different than American Black trauma or Black American trauma, but is real too. So I think there is so much that we've got in common. And, I'm proud of the fact that, again, my organization has a legacy. I'm proud of the fact that in a lot of ways, Black people have stood with Jewish people and they didn't have to. And so I think we got to move forward and we got to move forward together.
What do you think about Jewish people who support Donald Trump?
Hard to explain. I mean, it is certainly true that Donald Trump has a Jewish son-in-law and a Jewish daughter. He has Jewish grandchildren. Like he does. I mean, he has a closer relationship to the Jewish people than any other president in the history of the United States of America. By the way, the Abraham Accords, bringing together Israel and the UAE and Bahrain, that was a great thing, not just for Israel, but for the whole region. And, he called out anti-Semitism on college campuses. That hadn't happened before. Those are good things. And yet, he brought white supremacists into the White House. He trafficked in the kind of divisive language that not only alienated and terrified Jews, but lots of other minorities, from the Muslim ban, we said about Latinos, we said about Black people. He, from Charlottesville, when he said there were fine people on both sides, to telling the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, to telling these individuals who rampaged through the Capitol on January the 6th, wearing Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts. Like some of them had shirts that said 6 WME. 6 million wasn't enough. And he told them afterwards that he loved them, that they were great Americans. So
how do you punish that level of white privilege? That's a different, it's easy to punish like the comedian or the rapper, but how do you punish that level of privilege?
I think the whole country's still trying to figure that out.
Man.
But, I have not hesitated to call out Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, y'all called for him to be removed from office.
We did. We called him removed from office. We called him out starting on the campaign. And there's a reason why I never got invited to a White House Hanukkah party, when Donald Trump was in office. I wasn't exactly getting Christmas cards. But you know what? I don't really care. Like, my job is to speak truth to power, regardless of who is in power. And by the way, that cost me friends. That cost me influence. I'll tell you something else. I worked for President Obama. I spent 3.5 years in the West Wing, and I feel blessed to have worked for President Obama. And a lot of people, to your question about the tablet article, they just write me off. They say I'm some Democratic operative because I worked for President Obama. I mean, entirely untrue, whatever. But I didn't agree with everything President Obama did. And I didn't agree with the Iran deal that he was doing. And I called that out after I left the White House. And I lost friends in the Obama White House who said, why aren't you being loyal to us? And I lost friends because I called Donald Trump. They said, why aren't you being loyal to the Jewish people? I mean, my job is not to be loyal to this president or that president. My job is to protect the Jewish people. It's to fight anti-Semitism, racism, and hate of all kinds.
I got 3 more questions. I want to piggyback off that. How do you manage your own personal bias towards things as CEO of the ADL?
What do you mean?
Like, how do you, like, if you have like a personal bias towards something or a personal feeling about somebody, like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I will be honest with you. Like, I'm a human being, and I get criticized a lot, and I try again to learn from it, not to listen to it. That's my mantra. But sometimes that can kind of get under your skin, and you just try to work through it and deal with it. I also, again, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes that's hard, but that's my general approach. But look, like my wife and kids keep me honest. They often remind me about all the things I get wrong. So that helps me to like mitigate my tendency to go this way or that way, because they're constantly checking in with me.
Can the ADL speak for a whole community? And is it fair to ask the ADL to speak for a whole community?
I mean, all we can do is our job. And sometimes I think people think, that we represent the entire Jewish community. I'll tell you this. I do not feel like I represent I don't feel like I really have the authority, the moral authority to represent the whole community. Look, I was in business for a long time. I was building brands. I was creating companies back in California. Then I went to work for the president, and then I got recruited into this job. I'm not the most observant Jew. I didn't go to Jewish day school. We're civil rights organization. I'm not even a lawyer. Like, I'm an MBA who knows how to build things and ship software. So I say that because I don't feel like I have the right to represent all the Jews. But what I would say is that although I don't have the right, I don't know that I have the moral authority to represent all of our community. I work for our community. And so it is my job to remember that I'm here. Even these people criticizing me, even these people who don't like me, if they are the victim of a hate crime, I'll be the first person to take their call.
And you speak about the trauma that Jewish people have experienced, right? And I hear a lot of my Jewish friends, they talk about that PTSD, right? Do you really think another Holocaust could happen? Is that something that's in the back of your mind when you see the current climate?
I'll tell you what, I feel kind of badly. I wrote a book that I should have brought copies of this today. It came out in January. It's my first book. It's called It Could Happen Here. It Could Happen Here. And I wrote that book I started writing it after Pittsburgh, because I never would have guessed. I mean, maybe I'm naive, or I was naive. I never would have guessed that one day. I was in synagogue when that happened. I was in synagogue in my community here in New York, and my phone was buzzing. And in the middle of the service on Saturday morning, and it kept buzzing. And I don't look at my phone in service. And so my wife was like, "Gotta answer. Something's going on." I was like, I'm not getting to my phone. I'm in synagogue. But after the service was over, I went outside and I looked at my phone, and it was crazy. And by the way, one of the first messages I had was from my friend who at the time was running the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, like checking in. And it was a hard day. And I went down to Pittsburgh and there were a lot of funerals and it was pretty awful.
Mm.
So those situations really kind of humble you. And I started thinking about how am I going to deal with this? So I started writing this book. And I started writing this book because as I was saying before, my German grandfather, my Iranian father-in-law, now me, like Jews have experienced trauma, not in the ancient past. Like it's affected my family. Like again, the people that I know and love and cherish. So I don't think another Holocaust will happen where Jews will be systematically annihilated. But I do think there are a lot of warning signs that suggest that if we don't get our act together, history might not exactly repeat itself, but it very well could rhyme. And so when I say that, I mean, if I had said to you, I'd tell you something else. So when I'm with my book, I do a lot of talks. And I'll go to a synagogue, or I'll go to a bookstore, I'll go to some other place, and I'll talk in front of a large conference, large group of people, 300, 400, 500 people. People ask questions. Afterwards, I'll do a book signing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they'll come up to the table, you know? And they'll come up to the table, and this happens. This didn't used to happen. This happens now every time. Someone will come up, I can predict it, and say to me, do you think, well, where else should we go? Do you think we should be thinking about leaving? Have you heard about this golden passport program or something like that in Portugal? Do you know what's required to immigrate to Israel? I get asked these questions every time. So why do I get asked these questions? Because Jews all over the country, I think Jews, because of this kind of generational trauma, I think, and maybe as Black folk, you can relate to this in some way.
We've had those same conversations about where would we go
to Africa,
if the fascists take over.
Johannesburg, we've had these
Absolutely.
You think about that. So we think about that. And I think, again, maybe like you guys, I think Jews hear it a different wavelength. I think like ordinary people see what's going on and think, well, that's pretty bad. Jews are like, we've seen this movie before.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of know how it ends. And so I don't think, again, the Holocaust, the systematic, scientific annihilation of Jews across Europe, the obliteration of their culture, the incineration of all these people, I don't think that quite is going to replicate itself. If Iran could do what it wanted to do to Israel, they would probably nuke the country, to be clear. Mm-hmm. But here in this country, I don't think that's going to happen. But that doesn't mean, if I had told you if someone had said to me in 2015, Barack Obama's in the White House, marriage equality is passed, we're feeling pretty good about Democrats feeling pretty good about 2016. Country's moving forward. Someone said, let me tell you something, in 6 years, anti-Semitic incidents will have tripled. There'll be a series of mass shooting events at synagogues and kosher supermarkets around the country. Jews are going to be beaten up in broad daylight. There'll be Nazis on the biggest social media platforms. I would have said, you're crazy. It's never going to happen. I can't even imagine. That's inconceivable to me. So that was 6 years ago.
Damn.
So 6 years from now, if someone said to me, anti-Semitic incidents will have tripled again. Synagogues will be shut down. Jewish day schools will be closed because of the threats. Jews will have left in large numbers. Tucker Carlson will be the nominee for the GOP and will say, we need to get all the globalists out of, there'll be no globalists in my administration. That shouldn't sound so crazy.
Yeah. My last question, what would be the best possible outcome of this present moment that we're all in? Because we know fascism, bigotry, anti-Black racism, anti-Semitism, it don't benefit nobody in this room. So what's the best possible outcome of this current moment that we're in?
I want your grandchildren and your grandchildren and my grandchildren to be born in this country, to see each other as not just allies, but like members of the same family. And I want a country that treats all of its people, regardless of how they look or where they pray, with dignity and decency and respect. So your son isn't afraid to go to to go to an HBCU. So that my son isn't worried if he chooses to wear a kippah and walk down the street. Like, I don't think it's too much to ask that our kids should be able to lead the lives they want to lead, as Black or as Jewish as they choose. And I hope to realize that future for your kids, for my kids, for our kids, that we'll work together to create that. And we won't let our enemies tear us apart. We won't let ignorance get in the way. And that we'll come out of this moment, as painful as it's been, because it's painful, it's hard, that we'll come out of this moment together, stronger, and united in a way that we haven't been in generations.
All right.
All right. Well, Jonathan Greenblatt, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
And we got to
Thank you for
practice what we
having me.
preach, because you know people gonna be watching, so we got to show up for each other. You know, like you said on CNN, you said Jewish people have to show up for black people when there's anti-blackness, and black people have to show up for Jewish people when there's anti-Semitism.
You're here.
Word.
Absolutely. Well, it's the Breakfast Club, and don't be a stranger.
Deal.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm glad that we have a line that we can call and ask questions, and not afraid to ask questions.
Anytime.
All right. It's Jonathan Greenblatt. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Earth in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Go ahead, Mr. Bass. Continue to let it rip. I'm responding to Smitty. Peace, love, and blessings to everyone. Please hit that like button, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you have not done so. Hey, meet you. Blessings. Yeah, Riz about to break it down
If you
for
are
you.
on Instagram, if you are on YouTube, feel free to text this link out to, I would say, 5 people at minimum, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, that would truly help. We are going to go into something here in the chat on YouTube. Let everyone know what city, what state, what country you are checking in from. Let everyone know what city, what state, what country you are checking in from. We're going to go into the response to Mr. Jonathan Greenblatt, who was interviewed on The Breakfast Club. Shout out to The Breakfast Club for this interview. Why am I saying that? Number one, it was good to see the representative from the ADL speak on his own, where he was speaking thoroughly, but he was speaking on a platform where we could hear all of his statements for ourselves. It was very good for us to hear from the mind of the CEO of the very organization that is horrendously and consistently and incessantly attacking Black people and demonstrating its overt and covert anti-Black racism on a consistent basis, while at the same time saying that it is standing against hatred, against defamation. But that only seems to be the case when the person is a part of the J community and not any other community. We're going to go point by point. For those who have come into the room, this is not an attack on Jewish people, not even close. This is not an attack on Black folks, obviously not. This is not an attack on anyone's religion. This is not an attack on anyone's personal belief. This is an attack on ignorance. This is a clarification of facts. This is a response to the statements that were made. And when I say statements that were made, let me give you an example. I have over 100 points to respond to in a time-stamped order, because I watched the full 1-hour interview and I put the timestamps in order. Every timestamp, if you can see all of these, we're going to go in order of each timestamp, each point that was brought up, if you don't mind. And we're going to do this with facts. Some of the references that we're going to use, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to go into all the references because some of you might try to tell on me right now. I'm going to bring up the references in the order of the response to the points that were brought up. And I'm going to come out of different books. I'm going to go into historical references. I'm going to go into all these different points that demonstrate that what was being stated was not correct, was not accurate, was not genuine in some of the different statements, some of the things. Somebody said, no, not 100 plus. No, we will be cooking tonight. We will be cooking tonight. Let me say this. We as a people are very angry. We are not happy with the attacks that we have received on the part of white people, on the part of specifically Jewish people, on the part of anybody. We as Black people are not happy with Black people attacking each other. Y'all let me know if you're happy about that, because I'm not happy about that. We are not happy with the slander, with the defamation, with the attacks, with the consistent injustices that have been brought upon our people, while at the same time groups, organizations, cultures, religious bodies, you name it, benefit off of our people, sucking the lifeblood of our people, benefiting off of us financially, benefiting off of us spiritually and mentally, benefiting off of us and all of our organizations, all of our businesses, our talents, our companies, you name it. They have benefited in so many ways. And all we want is to be treated fairly and be given a chance to exist and not be taken advantage of. That's pretty much all we want. We just want fairness. We want justice. We want equality. We want freedom. That's it. The problem is so many people continue to eat off of us. So you won't leave us the hell alone. And what you get in response is a frustration that has been built up over the years. And then when you finally get a clap back, which is the colloquial nomenclature for a response in a way that you may not like it, then we look like the enemy. We look like the devil. We look like the culprit, the wrong one, because we're responding to being mistreated. Because so many of you who mistreat us, you do it in a very cunning, conniving, slick, underhanded, secretive way, behind closed doors, through certain text messages, affecting our bank accounts, affecting the people around us, messing up job opportunities. You know what you do. It's very old of how y'all operate. So we're frustrated, but what we're going to do, should I say right now, how I'm going to respond, is only going to be on the intellectual level, if you don't mind. We're not going to get personal, although it is damn personal. We don't need to get personal. We're going to go on actual facts. So now that those of you who just came in, if you are at work, shout out to the truckers, shout out to those who do security and overnight, shout out to those of you working at the warehouse, shout out to those of you who are doing any job that is overnight to feed your family, take care of yourself, pay off those loans, do whatever it is you need to do. You are working hard. I appreciate those of you right now who are working. You already know what I'm talking about. I've been there. You know what it is. Keep grinding, keep doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. For those of you who have school in the morning, I apologize. For those of you who have to get up for work in a couple hours, maybe this will give you some energy. Somebody said I'm on third shift. I know about that swing shift. For those of you who have to get up early and you are up watching me right now because you appreciate what I say and you value my take on things, I appreciate you as well. I sincerely do, and I pray that I make you proud in doing what needs to be done. So, just want to give a shout out to everybody who's watching right now from wherever you are watching, because we are about to conduct surgery. We're going to go to the timestamp. First question before I go into this: have you watched the interview with Mr. Jonathan Greenblatt on the Breakfast Club that aired today and was recorded yesterday? Have you watched it? Let me know. Have any of you watched this interview? The interview didn't get that many views because it's not interesting to a lot of people. Just, to be honest, for the Breakfast Club audience, it's not interesting. Like, it's like, who is Jonathan Greenblatt? I'm giving him attention right now by even bringing up his name, but it's the organization that he is now the CEO over, that he has taken over, which the legacy of this organization is very wicked, where our people are concerned. So it's more so the organization and its influence that I'm highlighting rather than him, right? So the vast majority of you have said no, absolutely. I know you didn't watch it. I know you didn't. I want to see if anybody did. But somebody said, I'm not going to watch it. I heard you. I heard you. So let me mention here, we're going to go to the timestamps. We're going to go point by point. If you get bored, hey, I get you. But this is my job, doing the research, giving you all the report, and fact-checking the situation. The main reason why I'm going to go over these timestamps right now is because the interview that was conducted was with someone by the name of Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. What is the Anti-Defamation League? The Anti-Defamation League was an organization founded to expose, track, trace, and stop the attacks against Jewish people. Then later on, they added in there to stop hate. No, the very pure core of what the ADL is to protect Jewish people. And I'm not mad at you. That's beautiful. Every group of people should have their own defense. Do y'all agree? I absolutely believe every single group deserves to have its own defense. Absolutely. That's intelligence. So I'm not mad at the ADL for being a defense organization for the Jewish people. You should. Well, we should too. I personally believe the Nation of Islam is that group. Some of you may disagree, but we should have multiple. Since we have so many different labels that we go by as a people, fine. Then let's come up with as many different groups that defend us as possible. All right. So first point that was brought up, at 1 minute and 50 seconds, and I'm going to sound like a computer because I'm going to go on the exact time that these things are mentioned so that you can go and watch it. If you don't want to watch the whole interview, you can just watch and make certain statements at these times that I'm going to point out. At 1 minute and 50 seconds, for those of you just coming in, we are talking about the interview on the Breakfast Club with Mr. Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. At 1 minute and 50 seconds, the question was, what is the ADL? What is the Anti-Defamation League? His response, Mr. Greenblatt said, well, Leo, he didn't say the name. He said the ADL is the oldest anti-hate organization in America. I beg to differ, Mr. Greenblatt, but let's just start off with the ADL. He said it was established and started because of a Jewish man that was lynched. A Jewish man was lynched in America in 1913. And that sparked this circumstance where we have to defend ourselves. Now, again, I'm completely with, pardon me, he was lynched in 1915. Pardon me. He was lynched in 1915. 1915, he was lynched. But the case started in 1913. The case started in 1913. First point, Mr. Greenblatt, you did not bring up the name of the person. Point number one. This is how I want us all to understand when it comes to research. Look at what they do not say. Point number one. Point number two, he said the ADL was established because a Jewish man was lynched. No. The ADL was established to try to say that a Jewish man was innocent after having been convicted, found guilty of raping and murdering a Caucasian Christian girl. That's the reason why Mr. Leo Frank, whose name he did not mention, the man he's talking about is Leo Frank. Everyone type into the chat, please. Leo Frank. This is why we don't play these games. We're going surgical on this. We're going to go to the root of a thing. So point number one you left out was the name of the person. The reason why he left the name out, or should I say, I believe the reason why he left the name Leo Frank out is because people would then go and look up the name Leo Frank. And they would look up the fact that, oh, this was a white man, Jewish, who raped a white girl, who was a Christian white girl at the time, which also goes into the Jewish, Christian, white, Christian, Jewish relations in America back then, because they had their own issues, right? And they didn't like that. She worked at the company that he was over, which I believe was a pencil making company. And he tried to blame it on a black man. This is the foundation of the ADL. So we're going to start here. Point number one that you brought up, Mr. Greenblatt. Leo Frank is the Jewish man who you all stood up and were protesting and saying, this is wrong. You have the wrong man, the wrong man. No, Leo Frank was found guilty. He raped a white girl. I'm harping on this point so that y'all can understand what the purpose of the ADLs being started in the first place was. Raped a little white girl. The people didn't like it. The evidence pointed to Leo Frank. He was found guilty. He was trying to say it was a black man that did it. I believe the janitor. He did it. He did it because at that time, all you needed was the word of a white man over the word of a black man, and it will be believed. Correct? This is in the early 1900s, 1910, 1911, 12, 13, 14. All you needed was the word of a white man, and it will be believed. And what did they do? Just as Carolyn Bryant Dunham, the Caucasian woman who lied on Emmett Till and said that he tried to rape me. And then over 50 years later, the same Caucasian woman admitted that she lied, and she is still alive today. But Emmett Till was murdered horrifically because of a lie that that Caucasian woman gave. And the same thing with Leo Frank, who tried to lie on a black man so that he would get off for being found guilty of raping and murdering a white girl. Now, let's go ahead and move forward. Just to give a little context, documentation, reason, where are the documents? What should we read? This is the third installment to the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. This is the third installment. There is book one that everyone should get. There is book two that everyone should get. And there is book three, which is the very foundation itself when it comes to the American relationship of the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. This book talks about the secret relationship between blacks and Jews, the Leo Frank case, the lynching of a guilty man. Reason, what do you mean lynching? Is that figurative? You're talking about how they lynched him, his character in the media? No. Leo Frank was found guilty. Let me read what it says on the back here. This is on the back of the book. Everyone should get this book. All three. The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. Type that in the chat. Books 1, 2, and 3. The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. Book 1, 2, and 3. Put that in the chat really quick if you don't mind. And for those who are in here, make sure you go to RizaIslam.com and purchase your Natural Immunity Wins shirts, hoodies, etc. While you're in here, and also subscribe to the website. Here's a description in the back of the book. The Leo Frank case has been called the greatest unsolved American murder mystery of all time. Now, here's another thing I'm going to mention while I'm going down these points that Mr. Greenblatt brought up. We are black folk, so we take pride in being who we are. Everybody else takes pride in who they are. They're supposed to. If you're white, take pride in being white. Just don't take pride in being white to the degradation or the destruction of everybody else who's not white. If you are whatever other nationality that you claim, be proud of that. That's fine. But when you are speaking of facts in history, Don't take pride in lying and placing the life of your people above the lives of everybody else when your people have subjugated the lives of so many others. The way Jonathan Greenblatt was talking, as many members, as you will mention, and pardon me, as you will learn, as I've witnessed in person talking to them, many members of the Jewish community speak of Jewish lives, not just being important because they are, but being more important in quantity. If 100 Black folks are murdered, but one Jewish person is punched, they will put more focus and energy on that, and that energy will be the same, if not more, than what energy we put on 100 of our people being murdered. Just to give you an understanding of context, not every Jewish person does that. However, many of the ones that I have talked to, how they talk about those lives, etc., when we're talking about something that is far more horrific, but they'll talk about something very small sometimes, and it will completely minimize the horror that we are dealing with. And this is how Jonathan Greenblatt was talking. I just wanted to kind of give you that because that is going to go into almost every single response, because so many of the things that this man said, it's not that I couldn't believe it. I know why you didn't get any pushback on the Breakfast Club. So yes, needless to say, sure, I'm disappointed in Charlamagne, DJ, and Angela Yee, but at the same time, I don't expect them to respond because they don't have the actual facts to respond with. And also there are other things. They're getting paid by these people. Their company is, connected. So you can't necessarily bite that hand to that degree because it's the company thing. So I get it. Do I agree with it? No, but I get it. So I'm not even mad at it. Here's a description at the back of the book. The Leo Frank case has been called the greatest unsolved American murder mystery of all time. John F. Kennedy, pardon me. Yeah, JFK. Malcolm X. There's so many more, but the greatest unsolved American murder mystery of all time. Okay, again, remind you, this is so, yes, we are, okay. In 1913, a Jewish B'nai B'rith leader was convicted of the brutal rape and murder of a white Christian girl. He was lynched for the crime. And for over a century, Jews have insisted that Leo Frank was innocent and that a Black man was the real killer. They say that Frank's case is the worst incident of anti-Semitism in American history. This highly acclaimed book solves the case and proves that Frank was guilty of the murder and that there was no anti-Semitism at all. The false charge of Black anti-Semitism used to manipulate and control political debate began with the Leo Frank case. This book by the Nation of Islam's researchers has become the acknowledged standard in the examination of this profoundly influential case. It is 536 pages, 1,227 footnotes, illustrations, maps, and photos showing how Jews turned a cold-blooded murderer into an icon of Jewish suffering. Let me say this real quick. Mr. Greenblatt, why did you not tell the Breakfast Club why Mr. Leo Frank was lynched? Why didn't you tell the Breakfast Club that Leo Frank raped a white girl? Why didn't you tell the Breakfast Club that Leo Frank was a Jewish man raping a white girl who worked at his company, and that when he was found guilty, not just an innocent man like the majority of our people that have been in that circumstance who were lynched, like all of our people who were lynched? Yet you're trying to equate it the same. No, that's called deception. That's called being forked-tongued. That's called using deceptive intelligence. Why did you tell him that Leo Frank was found guilty because of evidence? Why did you tell him that Leo Frank tried to blame it on a Black man because he knew the chances of him getting off by blaming it on a Black man would be very high? Why didn't you tell him that Leo Frank was not only found guilty, tried to blame it on a Black man, and that he went to jail? Not only did he go to jail, but the white folks who did not like what he did went to the jail, broke him out of the jail, and then brought him to the city where the girl was from, and then lynched him in that city. Not Black folk, white folk. Why didn't you tell the Breakfast Club that your martyr, your inspiration, your Jewish hero did some very unethical, immoral, disgusting, deplorable things that goes against the tenets of Judaism? Why did you not do that? Why didn't you say exactly what it was? Oh, because you couldn't use that. But that's the foundation of your organization. Again, Jewish people deserve to be defended if they get attacked. Absolutely agree. You founded the organization off of a rapist and then try to make it seem like he's innocent? Stop it. Because if that's the case, then you might want to go on to this whole thing of Black people saying, hey, well, R. Kelly's innocent. And everybody like that is innocent. You want to go there? Because that's kind of what it sounds like right now. You guys are You got to stop. You got to stop. If our people are wrong, we need to call them out. If your people are wrong, you get a whole organization created out of it. That's not okay. All right. Next point. And I'm not going to harp on these too long. I'm going to go right through these because there's so many points. At 3 minutes and 50 seconds, Mr. Greenblatt, you said the purpose of the ADL is to protect our community, to track antecedents, and to monitor extremists. You stated that last year, over 1,500 pieces of intelligence or information was given to the FBI by the ADL. Mr. Greenblatt, wow. What's interesting to me is, while you were carrying on about all of these things, saying that you work with the FBI, why didn't you tell the Breakfast Club that not only do you currently work with the FBI, but that it was the ADL primarily who was working with the FBI as it pertains to the spying on every Black leader that we have had in America? Mr. Greenblatt, why did you not tell the Breakfast Club that in 1942, the ADL, which of course you were not born at that time, but your organization, the ADL, led the FBI to arrest the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and over 80 other Black men? Why did you not tell them, Mr. Greenblatt, that it is you and the ADL that has worked with the FBI to track the Panthers, to go off when it comes to the Black Hebrew Israelites, as it pertains to Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, as it pertains to specific members of the Black Panther Party, especially Fred Hampton, who was murdered at the age of 21? Why is it that you did not tell them that you work with the FBI and that the ADL has been instrumental in the literal dismantling, destruction of Martin Luther King, of Malcolm X? The ADL has been tracking. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has helped to set up the divisions within Black organizations. The ADL has helped to cause a rift and division between Black leadership all throughout this country. And you have even helped when it comes to infiltrating these organizations. Why is it that you did not tell the Breakfast Club this, Mr. Greenblatt? I just wanted to bring up the fact that you said something, but you didn't say the something you should have said. It's called omission. It's called omission, is my point. It is called omission, a crime of omission. So let's go to the next point, because that's actually fairly easy. But the ADL, historically, from its inception up to the present, has been a FBI aid and spy organization on the Black community, and particularly the Black intelligentsia, the intellects within the Black community, to help in making sure that our people do not rise to a particular level of control and influence. The ADL has not been a friend of Black people. If anything, you have helped our enemies, and parts of your organization has itself completely been an enemy to our people. So let's continue. So again, the ADL works with the FBI. So anytime you hear them talk about, we need to have this Black artist, Kyrie Irving, Kanye West, which I'm going to get to because he mentioned their names, they need to meet with us. Why would we meet with the FBI? Because that's who we're meeting with when we meet the ADL. What are you talking about? Why am I going to go and sit down and meet with the FBI? I've had the FBI show up and meet with me multiple times. They meet with different people, but why are we going to go and sit down with, for what? I mean, what is that going to do? What is that? What are you talking about? The ADL, FBI, they shake hands, according to the words of Mr. Greenblatt himself. Let's continue. These are his own words that I'm bringing up point by point in time stamp frame when he mentioned these things on the Breakfast Club interview that aired today. At 5 minutes, he said the ADL lobbies, funds, and even works on affecting the money of people who they feel spread hate. Wait a minute, Mr. Greenblatt. So you mean to tell me you and the ADL, or partial Jewish community, you have influence over money, which is banking, which is proof when it comes to Kanye West having over $100 million being frozen and removed, or told to be removed, from JP Morgan Chase. You mean to tell me, did you just validate the fact that Jewish members in the Jewish community have some control and influence over banking? Is that what you said? Because you did say literally that You lobby, which means you go and meet with congressional members now. So the ADL has that much kind of influence where you go in and meeting with congressmen and women. You're meeting with House of Representatives and senators. And you also affect the money of people who you feel spread hate. So you literally now are admitting that members of the Jewish community do control and have influence when it comes to banking. Okay, we already knew this. We're not anti-Semitic. You're saying it yourself. You're the Semitic person, right? You're so-called the Semitic one. Fine. You said that. Okay, good. So glad to know that the ADL has influence and control over banking. At 5 minutes and 20 seconds, Mr. Greenblatt says the ADL reaches 3 to 4 million children in schools every year with different anti-hate programs, he said, and we're educating children on the different forms of hate or different things when it comes to communicating and learning about each other. Okay, we know what this is, and that may be true, but let's look at what's underneath that, for example. Sure, you may be going in and telling children it's wrong to hate children, and then what will you do? You will say, for example, Jewish people have been under attack since blah, blah, blah. What that is, it's called indoctrinating. That's not just reaching 3 to 4 million children. No. That is called indoctrination. And you're indoctrinating 3 to 4 million children a year. You're not just educating them against hatred. Stop doing that. That's called double talk. That's called a crime of omission, which means you're not saying things that should be inside of that statement that you're making, which makes it a full contextual statement, a full statement in context. That's not okay, Mr. Greenblatt, because you're not going into these locations educating them about the horrors affecting Black people. You're not educating them about the horrors affecting Mexicans. You're not educating them about the horrors affecting natives on reservations. You're not harping on that. You may mention it for about 2 seconds, and you'll give the other 2 hours to the Jewish dedication, like you did on the Breakfast Club. So let's continue. Next point. I'm just going down this. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. Again, go to RizaIslam.com. Make sure you subscribe and also get anything that you feel may help you when it comes to the products that we have on the website. At 6 minutes and 30 seconds, this is going to be interesting to y'all. The Jewish stereotypes is what they start to address when it comes to 6 minutes and 30 seconds. The Jewish stereotypes. Jews run Hollywood. Jews control banking. You know, there is a Jewish group that is running a number of different things when it comes to controlling athletes and controlling sports and controlling music and film and fashion, right? They were going over the Jewish, what they call tropes or stereotypes. Okay, well, let's see. After that, at 7 minutes, Charlemagne and Greenblatt talk about how they've been talking for years and that we should call people in before we call them out at 7 minutes and 15 seconds. So let me go ahead and put all that together. Number one, Mr. Greenblatt. Stereotypes only gain power when you literally validate them by doing the very thing the person said you would do if you had the ability to do it. I'm gonna say that again. Stereotypes only gain power if the very thing that you do, or the very thing that is said that you can do, you do it when the people say that this is what you're going to do. If I say, for some reason, it looks like members of the Jewish community have a lot of influence over banking, and then you take down someone's bank account with hundreds of millions of dollars in it, you're not helping the case. If I say Jews run Hollywood, and then you prevent me from getting any more auditions, you stop me from having my career grow, even though I'm one of the greatest actors and I've been in tons of films and I'm on the A list of actors in Hollywood, but now my career has been stifled. I've been blackballed. You're only validating that point. This is the basics and intelligence that you think we don't have. Now, here's the sad part about this. It's very insulting, but again, all of these things are very basic points. So they are not stereotypes. They're facts that you don't like to be heard because you don't like people exposing who you really are. And the sad thing is, if more Jewish people came out and spoke out against the ADL, or I guess you would call the bad Jewish people, if more good Jewish people would come out and speak against the bad Jewish people and call them out for doing what they're doing, then we will be able to identify the separation. Like, oh, hey, thank y'all. Kind of like saying, why don't the good police come out and speak out against the bad police? You make it difficult for people to trust the entire apparatus, your entire group, if none of you come out from behind the door and address the wrong things that certain members of your group are doing. If you don't do that, then we have no choice but to look at the fact that, damn, all of you are, in the colloquial nomenclature, or the way we describe it in our terminology, is your own code. You're in lockstep with each other. You're not breaking ranks. You are being company people. You are not going against the dominant agreement of the group. You're not violating company policy. You're staying right there with them by your, what is it that you constantly say? By your silence. Hatred is spreading because of your silence. That's what's happening. Too many Jewish people are not speaking up against the evils that certain members of the Jewish community are committing against Black and all others. Okay, let's continue. Another thing. At 7 minutes and 15 seconds, Mr. Greenblatt, you said we should call people in before we call them out. You have not met with the Honorable Minister Farrakhan nor the Nation of Islam. What are you talking about? You refuse to meet with members of the Hebrew Israelites. What are you talking about? You throw your stone and you call everybody in the Nation of Islam anti-Semitic, horrible people, blah, 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 blah. But you refuse to meet with us. But you said, I don't believe in canceling people. I believe we should call people in before we call people out. And you did it with this very psychologically, very well-trained veil of sincerity. And I'm not being disrespectful. We know you because what you said wasn't sincere. I don't believe in that. We should call people in before we call them out. We have been asking to have a meeting with you, to dialogue. Specifically, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan has been calling for a dialogue between the Jewish community and the Nation of Islam for over 40 years. And then that call for a conversation, which, by the way, many high-ranking rabbis and members of the Jewish community have met with Minister Farrakhan on multiple occasions at his home, or he has gone and met with them in their home, etc., etc. But you all have not come out and publicly in a symposium-like setting where members of the Jewish community and the high-ranking rabbis or the 12 ranking rabbi organizations on your side have met with us on our side, where we can actually cross-reference and have a dialogue in front of the world publicly. See, the problem is you do things in the shadows, in the dark, but then you attack us in the light, in the public. That's the problem. It is very, very disingenuous to get on the Breakfast Club and say, we call people in before we call people out. No, you attack people. You don't just call people out and not call them in. You just attack people for an opinion, for making a statement or a question, or even just mentioning, just saying the term Jew. Okay, listen, you got to knock it off. Knock it off. Mr. Greenblatt, you were not genuine, sir. Not with that statement. Let's see if there are any others that you were not genuine about. But you definitely attack people, the ADL. You do not call people in. You attack people. At 8 minutes, he said, or you said, Mr. Greenblatt, on the Breakfast Club interview, we protect Jewish people at the core. Thank you. Just speak straight words, player. Because if I was sitting right there, you would have no choice. If the minister was sitting right there, well, of course, then I would be honored to even be in the building, because I would just be sitting down listening. And the crazy thing is, we wouldn't be attacking anybody having, a conversation with the Jewish people. We don't do that. I know, only 8 minutes in, right? It's crazy. But that's not how we operate. See, that's the other sick way that you picture us, right? Black people, we're just thugs. We're just some thuggish people trying to attack. Knock it off. Just admit that you don't want to sit down and have a conversation with us, because we're going to unravel all of the lies that you have been perpetrating onto the masses of the people. Just speak the truth. And let's come to an agreement. So you protect Jewish people. Thank you. At the core of the ADL, what you said is to protect Jewish people. Yes, that's not just the core. That's about 99.999% of what it is. And then you do other things to make it look like the ADL is for other members of the human family. It's not. And it is okay. It's like saying the Black Defense League. What am I saying? I'm telling you who I'm defending. Yes, this is not an equal opportunity type of thing. Everybody's included. No, you deserve to have your own organizations that defend you. Everyone deserves that. Stop apologizing for this. Period. I'm a Black man. That's it. Simple. I do what is done for my people first, and then for other people. But my people come first. Your people should come first. I agree, but not to the degradation of mine. I'm not ever thinking what I can do to harm a Jewish person. Ain't nobody, I guarantee there's no hood you go to, nowhere, where Black people try to come up with a way to beat up Jewish people. We don't think like that. That's some goofy, you're weird. There's something wrong. Like, none of us are thinking like this at all. Y'all got this sick thing where you think people are trying to attack you. No, Somebody might be trying to attack you, but not black folks as a whole. Sorry, we are more busy trying not to be attacked by our own people, number one. And then your people, white, Jewish, whatever you want to call it, you're considered white to us. It doesn't matter what you call it. You're white. Like, that's what y'all got to get through your head. You're considered white. So our main focus is on our own communities, us not killing each other, doing each other wrong, and then racist police officers, and then other white folks under whatever label you want to call yourself, including Jewish. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out there. At 8 minutes and 25 seconds, let me run through these. Let me run through these. At 8 minutes and 25 seconds. And by the way, yes, I know the color code system, color cast system, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, Carl Bolognese, all that bull crap. You're considered white. I just want to make that very clear. Any smart black people here trying to go into the reason where you're not black, they're not white. Okay, you can kill it, you can end it. The reality is, in the real world, white folks, black folks, that's how people talk. Period. Period. That's what we're talking about. So let's end the nonsense. A white police officer comes to you, you're not like, you're an Italian police officer. You're not doing that. That's a white man. That's what you're going to say. That's a white man. Just like they're not going to say, oh, shoot, I'm going to shoot a Hebrew Israelite. No, I think it's a 5%. No, I think it's a more. I'm going to shoot a Nation of Islam. No, I think no, it's a black dude. I'm about to shoot a black man. Black male, 6'2", shots fired. Stop it. The moment we get through that crap, we will in a more fast, quick way, we'll be able to come together and be a little more intelligent. They are on the same page. We need to get on the same page. Okay. At 8 minutes, one of my favorites, at 8 minutes and 25 seconds, anti-Semitism, he said, is an insane conspiracy theory. Anti-Semitism is an insane conspiracy theory. Okay, Mr. Greenblatt. Black people are intelligent. I know a lot of people on the other side who are white. You may not be used to us displaying our intelligence because on so many of your platforms, a lot of our people have gone kind of crazy with the stuff that's not too smart and may not represent our higher level of thinking and intelligence. We're quite intelligent, dangerously to your lives. We're very intelligent. So let me say this to you, Mr. Greenblatt. Anti-Semitism is a insane conspiracy theory. Okay, no, it's not. Most black folks don't even know what anti-Semitism means. Let me say it one more time. Most black people don't even know what the term means. And guess what? You don't even know what it means because you couldn't explain exactly what it meant on the Breakfast Club interview. It is a label that you create, which basically stands for anybody who you dislike. The term anti-Semitism now and anti-Semitic is a label that is used so loosely that all it means is anybody that the Jewish community doesn't like. You're anti-Semitic. That's all it means. There's no logic in it. It is the most overused term next to the word Negro, next to the nigga. It holds no weight in the black community. We do not honor that, although a portion of it is real. Meaning, are there some people who hate Jewish people? Yes. The majority of them happen to be white folks of a different tribe. I'll say it that way. The Italians, the Scots, the Germans. Okay, so it's your white cousins. But there are no black people in huge groups who hate and want to get rid of you. That does not exist. I'm sorry to tell you that. Sorry to tell you this. So, conspiracy theory, no, it's a conspiracy. Conspiracy, meaning there are groups and organizations coming together to use that label to weaponize it to attack anybody that you don't like. He's anti-Semitic. Reason's anti-Semitic. I have not put my hands on no Jewish person ever. Never talked about doing it. Never encouraged anybody to do it. Never. You hate Minister Farrakhan so much, but not one member of the Nation of Islam has ever physically harmed one member of the Jewish community. So what the hell are y'all talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No, like, okay, what's your evidence, bro? What are you talking about? We got records of Jewish people calling for the death of Minister Farrakhan, chanting outside of different events. We hate Farrakhan. Who do we want Farrakhan? How do we want him dead? Hold up, yo, Jewish folk. Y'all remember that? That's when Khalid Muhammad came outside and ran those Jewish dudes calling for Minister Farrakhan's death, ran them away. Don't get this twisted. Let's continue. 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Mr. Greenblatt, you said that anti-Semitism is the oldest form of hatred there is. Oh my gosh, you are so pregnantly arrogant. Pregnantly arrogant. the hatred of Jewish people is the oldest form of hatred there is? In the world, you say it goes back thousands of years. Mr. Greenblatt. See, what you do is you just discount everybody else and what everybody else goes through. It's the oldest hatred. Cut it out. He said that. Some of y'all are not gonna believe some of the stuff I bring up. I'm like, he didn't say that. Okay, at 8 minutes and 45 seconds on the Breakfast Club interview, Mr. Greenblatt said that anti-Semitism is the oldest form of hatred there. Mr. Greenblatt, Moses wasn't Jewish. Judaism didn't come into existence until after Moses. So after. He didn't come into Judaism. Judaism came into existence after Moses. And there were different forms of spiritual systems before Judaism where people were hating each other. The consistent hatred has absolutely been white versus everyone else in whatever area that you want to call it, whatever geographical positioning place, whatever culture you want to call it. That is a lie. Book reference really quick when it comes to understanding different levels of spirituality outside of the classic three monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Spirituality before religions, one of the books. Spirituality is Unseen Science. Science is Seen Spirituality by our brother, Professor Dr. Kaba Khamenei. Kaba Hiawatha Khamenei, a good brother. Love our brother, one of our great scholars. Good brother, love our brother. He's one of the greatest teachers who loves the minister, loves Most High Elijah Muhammad, loves all the work. That's just one of the references that I'll mention. I'll also mention another book here. Almost forgot, I had it. The Book of God by True Islam, aka Dr. Wesley Muhammad. The Book of God by Dr. Wesley Muhammad, aka True Islam. The Book of God by True Islam, aka Dr. Wesley Muhammad. And this book goes over the Black presence and representation in many of the areas of spirituality, many of the so-called religions, many of the different spiritual systems, and the presence of God being Black, and the different representations that they worshiped, the physical forms of what they consider to be God or their deity, and how virtually every single time God is Black. Virtually every single time. Critical. These are just references when it comes to looking at spiritual systems thousands of years ago and prior till. Anti-Semitism is not the oldest form of hatred, Mr. Greenblatt. Again, when you're trying to cap, I said you just cap. Stop it. Stop. Just say you're protecting Jewish people. That's cool. You don't need to exaggerate, because that was a heavy exaggeration. Lord have mercy. Woo. At 9 minutes and 27 seconds, we're getting there. We're getting there. At 9 minutes and 27 seconds, he said, Jews are always blamed, but they're not doing anything wrong. The Jews are not the ones doing these things. He said it's the heavy left. It's those people on that side of the political spectrum that are doing these things. It's not Jewish people. Jewish people have never done anything wrong. Mr. Greenblatt, which I believe is a Yiddish name, which means green leaf in Yiddish. Mr. Greenblatt. Word. Really? Okay. Let's just start off with a few points. The creation of the NAACP with Mr. Spingarn. Jews partially helped to found and create the NAACP. Not because you so cared about Black people and our advancing, but because you wanted to recruit the intelligent ones among our people to monitor us so that we would not progress to the level that we would have if you had not had your hand and intervened in our affairs. And that is the fact. That is the fact. Stop it. Almost every organization that the Jewish community helped to create when it comes to Black people has not been a Black organization to push and promote Black people to become the greatest and the best in our fields and to become justified and free and equal in society. It has not been. It has been, you can go up to the highest level that you can go under us. That is the fact. Stop playing. Mr. Greenblatt. Jews did plenty of things wrong. Members of the Jewish community have done plenty of things wrong. And the reason why I don't want to go down Lord have mercy, again, there are so many. The creation of the ADL and what you've done with the ADL, you've attacked and labeled virtually every Black leader that we have ever had as anti-Semitic. So I'll start there. Noble Drew Ali has been given a label of anti-Semitic. Marcus Garvey was called anti-Semitic. Martin Luther King, anti-Semitic. Malcolm X, anti-Semitic. Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, anti-Semitic. Elijah Muhammad, anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic. The Black Panthers, anti-Semitic. Everybody, anti-Semitic. Michael Jackson, anti-Semitic. Barack Obama, anti-Semitic. Barack Obama's longtime reverend, the man who he went to church and listened to, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, anti-Semitic. Dave Chappelle, anti-Semitic. Kanye West, anti-Semitic. Kyrie, anti-Semitic. Anybody who stood with Minister Farrakhan, anti-Semitic. By proxy, by just associating with him, anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic. Recent Islam, anti-Semitic. Air, anti-Semitic. He's anti-Semitic. He coughed too hard. It's an anti-Semitic cough. Get some water. Anti-Semitic coughing over here. And yes, I'm being sarcastic on that because we're sick of it. It's disgusting. Nick Cannon, anti-Semitic, because he talked about Black people being the Semites in an interview with our brother Professor Griff. And he brought up those who were in the Caucasus Mountains, meaning Caucasian people. And he brought up, yeah, Black folks are Semitic people, which, by the way, later in this interview, again, Mr. Greenblatt, you admitted. So we're going to get to that because now it's like, wait a minute. So you owe Kyrie, Kanye, well, we'll work on that. You owe Kyrie, you owe Dave Chappelle, Minister Farrakhan, you owe a lot of people an apology. Let me move on to this point. So there's a lot that y'all have done wrong. Jews in Hollywood. Jews in Hollywood. You mentioned that although saying that Jews own Hollywood or run or control Hollywood is anti-Semitic, Hollywood was partially founded by the Jews. Hold on. Wait a minute. If you're the founder, that means you are the one who it originated with, who the idea came from, and who it was established because of. You're the founder. Oh yeah, y'all can type in more names into the list of who they called anti-Semitic. The list is endless. Jesse Jackson, you called anti-Semitic. Al Sharpton, you called anti-Semitic. Everybody just hates Jewish people, huh? Get over yourself. I'm going to say this to you. And I will say it to you in person, to your face, with the most genuine certainty and with true love. I'll say it. Get over yourself. We are dealing with some of the most horrific things in this country. Partially, you know what? Damn it. The Jewish control of our Holocaust, partially. You were a part of the transatlantic slave trading of our people. You helped to sponsor the shackles and chains that went over and around Black people's ankles, wrists, and necks. You helped to sponsor the ships that brought a lot of our ancestors over here. You were the one selling us on the auction block. We got a nigga here. He's 5'5". He's good at carpentry. He has a strong back. He can work as long as you need him to work. We got a nigga witch here. Yeah, she's nice, supple breasts. Yeah, she don't give you no back talk. Yeah. You were the auctioneers. 75% of the Jews owned slaves in the South. That is a fact. These books are compilations from Jewish writers, Jewish authors, Jewish rabbis, Jewish historians. These are your own words. Jewish writers, Jewish historians, Jewish rabbis. These are from your words, your people. I could just stay there that you have been a part of our Holocaust, but we were never a part of yours. You've done a lot wrong that you have not apologized for, that you have not made up for, that you have not repaired for, that you have not repented for, but that you continue to act as if you had no part in it and you dodge it all day long while calling us anti-Semitic when you have been one of the greatest groups of anti-Black people in your demonstration. But if we say something you don't like, we hate all Jewish people. It makes us sick. It's disgusting. You need to end it. Knock it off. Now, Mr. Greenblatt, knock it off. And this is why you don't have discussions and dialogues with us in public, because this is what you're going to get. And it won't even be this much fire. It won't. If you just sit down and have a conversation, but you don't want to hear this. Because rather than apologizing and using all of that money that y'all have and all the influence you have to make it right, you just keep dodging it as if you had nothing to do with it. You have zero accountability. It's evil. And we don't like it. Next point. I particularly, I don't know about y'all. I like when white folks go back and forth with other white folks over truth. I like that. Finally. Yeah. What do I mean by that? At 10 minutes and 14 seconds, Mr. Greenblatt, you brought up the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. So what is the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion? What is that book? The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion is a book written by Victor E. Marsden that they call one of the most anti-Semitic books in history. One of the most anti-Semitic books in history. Oh, this book is horrible. It is terrible. They call The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, books 1, 2, and 3. They also say that these books are anti-Semitic when it's from the words of Jewish rabbis, Jewish authors, Jewish historians. That's all these words are. The Nation of Islam just put it together. That's pretty much it. Put it together, chronicalized, and put the footnotes at the bottom and said, hey, all these Jewish people that are saying what they're saying in these books, you call it anti-Semitic? Okay, but you're not calling any of the Jewish people who wrote all these words anti-Semitic. You have to call all of them anti-Semitic because it's your people. Respected Jewish people. Okay, anyway, let's continue. This is how much sense you're not making, Mr. Greenblatt. Let's continue. The Protocols of the Meetings of the Learned Elders of Zion. This book, for those of you who don't have this book, and I'm going to give you also another book that goes around that environment that goes in the same bucket for some of them. Behold a Pale Horse, written by another white man, Mr. William Cooper, who blew the whistle on a lot of what they do. This government hated William Cooper, for what he exposed, a lot of it. But let's read what the Protocols of the Meetings of the Learned Elders of Zion is about. Victor Emil Marsden was born in Salford, England in 1866, a journalist and translator best known for translating the most widespread English language version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, published posthumously in 1923, meaning after he passed away. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is what they say. This is them now. How you know that they meddling? Because this is not on the back description of the book. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is an anti-Semitic hoax. But stop it. See, let people read what it actually says. See this? Man, y'all can't even let us read what it says. You're trying to tell us what to think about the book. But you don't control any media. You don't control. Guys, Mr. Greenblatt. It was first published in Russia in 1903, translated into multiple languages, and disseminated internationally in the early part of the 20th century. Henry Ford funded the printing of over 500,000 copies that were then distributed throughout the United States in the 1920s. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis publicized the text as though it were a valid document, kind of how your organization continues to put horrifically disgusting, mischaracterizing things about Black leaders, our Black leaders, every single couple years, every one of our Black leaders. You talk about them horribly. You lie about us. You mischaracterize them. You say they were this. You say they were that. Stop it. You both do that. Y'all do it too. But let's continue. After the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, it ordered the text to be studied in German classrooms. Okay, let's move past your indoctrination and let me just read what the book actually says at the back of it, guys. Come on down with this. Let's do this here because this is why. See, this is again, this guys. I just want to read to the people the back of the actual book. If you could stop not controlling the media that you don't control, can you? Okay. This is in real time, y'all. This is real time. So I don't have the book yet, but I will be getting a copy. Taken from the preface to the Protocols of Zion. The author of this translation of the famous protocols was himself a victim of the revolution. He had lived for many years in Russia and was married to a Russian lady. Among his other activities in Russia, he had been for more. Let me read why the book was written, and that's all I'm looking for. Okay, so clearly you guys have hidden this. Let me just let people know. The book was written and stated that there is a secret group of Jewish people who are pushing to control the world, and that their purpose is to take over every single system all over the world. That there is this effort of Jewish powers to control the world through banking and education, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the book's overall theme is. And so far, because you don't control the internet, there's no Jewish people controlling the internet at all. There's no Jewish people controlling media, although the description of the book, it just so happens to say this is a anti-Semitic hoax. I wasn't reading a review. I was reading what the description of the book was on the internet. And it's like, geez, okay, guys, you didn't control anything like that at all, but you just so happened to control that. But you did. Now, let's continue to go to the next point. That book he tried to attack and say that book was terrible. It was just a bunch of theories and blah, 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 blah. He's white. Let me just say this. Mr. Victor E. Marsden is white. He was a white man. He wasn't Black. He was a white man. Okay. A white man from England. So that's that book. Let me go to the next point here. Again, anything that's speaking the truth about anything that any Jewish person is doing is a conspiracy theory. But if anybody says anything that the Jewish community doesn't like or the ADL doesn't like, they're anti-Semitic off the bat, off the rip. Boom. Okay, you see the double standard here? You see how you're making no sense and why our community can't stand what you're saying because it's literally making zero sense. Let's continue. Next point. At 10 minutes and 30 seconds, He said another stereotype is that Israel is controlling Congress. Well, wait a minute, Mr. Greenblatt. You might want to chill out. You just stepped into this position not too long ago. So if I were you, I really wouldn't try to take up for the Jewish state of Israel. I don't think you want that on your conscience. I don't think you want Palestinians being systemically murdered by Israeli soldiers on your conscience in the name of radical views of Judaism, saying that you're the chosen people and this is your homeland because you went in and invaded a place and you started killing these people off, and you have been killing them off since. In the Jewish state of Israel, you are helping to sterilize and inject birth control shots into Ethiopian Jewish women right now. Do you want this in your conscience? You systemically keep Ethiopian Jewish people out of different parts of Israel because you don't believe that they truly are Jews. But you're the only Jew, even though you converted in the 8th century. You're not the original Jew, but fine. That's another response for another question because that was brought up. But let's continue. So Israel controlling Congress is not a conspiracy theory. Okay. Why is it that so many members of Congress have to stand with Israel in order to be admitted fully? And when I say admitted fully, I mean for their word to even be taken serious to a degree. That's what the climate, that's what the culture suggests. If you don't stand with Israel, your career is not too smooth in Congress. Reason, how do you know this? Because my major was political science in college. I did not graduate on purpose. And I not only studied it, but I met with many congressmen and women. I went to the Congressional Black Caucus in Washington, D.C., and I looked at AIPAC. And like, the American Israeli, wait a minute, AIPAC, hold on, let me get the exact abbreviation correct here. AIPAC, because I was like, wait, what is AIPAC? The American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Why is it that so many members of Congress and different politicians meet with and go to AIPAC, and that is looked at as a standard to determine whether or not they are fully trustworthy? Are y'all fully with it? You really down with this or not? Because if you're not down with Israel, you're not going to really get all the support you need in Congress. And that is well known. This is a well-known fact. So Mr. Greenblatt, that's another point. For shame, sir. You're not being genuine. 11 minutes. Radicalized Asian Muslim. He brought up an Asian who attacked a synagogue in Texas and took hostages. Okay, that's legit. That's legit. And guess what, Mr. Greenblatt? We understand. We understand. I think we understand better than most. We understand. Interesting, because right after that, you bring up the fact that these attacks are happening to Jewish people. And when we talk about attacks happening, see, this is what happens. I don't consider somebody disagreeing with me an attack. I don't consider somebody telling me they don't like me because I'm black an attack. I don't consider somebody saying, oh, I don't like you because you're in the Nation of Islam as an attack. I don't consider someone saying, oh, I don't like you because you're Muslim an attack. I don't consider anybody, I don't give a damn. An attack is not just verbal. An attack to you is verbal. An attack to us is every single thing that we continue to suffer from. And not only that, but you brought up the fact that synagogues are being attacked. So now every synagogue, what you said, Mr. Greenblatt, has an armed guard outside of it. Did you know that, Mr. Charlemagne? He said that, right? Again, trying to find some common ground. Mr. Greenblatt, the Nation of Islam has had guards, FOI, guarding the mosque since its inception over 80 years ago, because we are behind enemy lines from being victimized from your people and white radical, whatever you want to call them, racist white folks in America. We've been had security from the beginning. You're just now saying that there's armed guards now because we're attacked, because you don't have a history of being attacked in America on a consistent basis because of your religion, because of your skin color, because of your culture, because of anything. You don't have a long history, and I'm talking about in high numbers. Let's get this straight. One person here and there, an individual here and there, 2 people, 5 people here and there who are Jewish getting attacked. That's what that is. That's 1 here, that's 2 there, that's 5 here, that's 10 there. Those are legit attacks. It's wrong. And nobody should attack anybody because of their religion. That's wrong. However, let's look at it, not compare. Let's just look at it to see if we understand. Black people who have been getting murdered, shot, raped, robbed, lynched, burned, horrifically destroyed, ripped apart by dogs, water hoses, diseases, by this government on a consistent basis every day up until a certain point where it slowed down a little bit. Nation of Islam has had security at the door. and all around the mosque for over 80 years. You just now are putting armed guards at the synagogues, which proves the point. You're not the main target in America. You haven't been, yet you keep saying the number one hatred in America in the world is anti-Semitism. No, it's not. No, it's not. Let's continue. At 13 minutes, you bring up the Black Hebrew Israelites. First off, let me say shalom to those who live the righteous tenets and to the righteous principles who refer to themselves as Hebrew Israelites. We know we're the Hebrews. Boom. Simple as that. But there are people in every group who do not properly represent and may go out here and do some crazy stuff. So let's get that straight. Every individual may not represent properly. Let's get that straight. However, you brought up the Black Hebrew Israelites and you said they're anti-Semitic. Let me let y'all know right now before I finish this thing, the one group he did not bring up that he should have brought up was the Nation of Islam. Because you already know we got the books on you. Full documents. And we have been the target of your hatred for years. But you brought up the Black Hebrew Israelites. No. Stop dancing around the real people. You didn't bring up Minister Farrakhan's name once. You didn't bring up the Nation of Islam once. Because you already know that's not smoke that you ever want, because you have been a horrific person. Talking about the ADL, the body of the ADL, when it comes to the Nation of Islam in particularly, and Black people generally. But you have been beating the Nation of Islam for years. Minister Farrakhan specifically. Then next to him, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, all of our leaders, you've been beating our people. But you knew better. That's why you didn't mention our name. You already knew. But you're going to get this work anyway. Now, let's continue. 1345, a very interesting point that you brought up at 13 minutes and 45 seconds that you should not have brought up because that wasn't too wise. You brought up Kanye West putting up a swastika. I need everyone to type into the chat here. Swastika. Please type into the chat the word swastika. Please type into the chat swastika. Here's a lesson in understanding when your enemy is trying to get you to dislike people because they dislike people. That's not proper. The swastika is another thing that white folks stole. So let me say this. Let me say this really quick. The swastika is a symbol that belongs to original melanated people on the planet thousands and thousands and thousands of years before white people even knew it was a thought. The swastika, to make it very plain for you, is a symbol that has been used by the Indians for thousands of years in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, everyone type in Sanskrit, S-A-N, Sanskrit, S-A-N-S-K-R-I-T. In Sanskrit, the word swastika means well-being. It means well-being. The swastika is a symbol that has been used by the Hindus, by the Buddhists, by the Jains for millennia. The swastika was snatched and stolen like almost everything that white people have taken. The swastika was taken around 1920 by the Nazis to be added to a part of their symbol, which is this. This is their symbol, right? That's their symbol that you've seen on the arms of Nazi soldiers and pictures and different things like that. This was their symbol. This is theirs, right? May I break this down really quick? In 1920, Adolf Hitler decided that the Nazi Party needed its own insignia and flag. For Hitler, the new flag had to be, quote, a symbol of our struggle, end quote, as well as, quote, highly effective as a poster, end quote. So on August the 7th, 1920, write the year 1920. Prior to 1920, the Nazis did not have this. They didn't have the swastika in there as that symbol prior to 1920. So again, white folks, you're stealing our stuff again. And they're making it something terrible when it was something good. Let's continue. 1920, type the date in, 1920. At the Salzburg Congress, this flag became the official emblem of the Nazi Party. In Mein Kampf, which is Adolf Hitler's diary, his book, Mein Kampf is German, Mein Kampf, which translates roughly to English as my struggle. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler described the Nazis' new flag as, quote, in red, we see the social idea of the movement. In white, the nationalistic idea. In the swastika, the mission of the struggle for the victory of the Aryan man. And by the same token, the victory of the idea, creative work, which is as, and such always has been and always will be anti-Semitic. Okay. Every color meant something different. The red meant something different, as he was saying, that the red meant the social idea of the movement. The white was for the nationalistic idea of the movement, of the pure race, the Aryan race. And then the swastika for the push for victory, the mission of the struggle, the victory of the Aryan man. Another little piece here, just a little side note. The Aryans, who were looking up to a man by the name of Bishop Arius. Bishop Arius was a black man. Okay, Bishop Arius. He was one of the over 300 bishops that was present at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Bishop Arius was a black man. He was okay. Listen, wait. Woo. Okay. Should have never gave you niggas books. I know. That's why you didn't let us read, because this is bad. It's bad. It's really bad. It's like really bad. Like really bad. Okay. If Hitler knew that Bishop Arius was a black man, he'd be rolling around his grave. There's black folks, the Aryans. And they fled from the Council of Nicaea because they found out that Constantine was going to assassinate him. And so they fled. Him and his followers became known as the Aryans. It was black. Woo! Aryans. Black folk. Anyway, now, so that's a point of fact when it comes to this. So let me take it a little further, if y'all don't mind, when it comes to this whole swastika. Point number one, here are some pictures here of swastika, fine eating California fruit. There are some flyers there. A metal clip of a swastika that Coca-Cola used. That was back then when Coca-Cola, 5 cents, you could buy a bottle of Coke for 5 cents back then. Coca-Cola company used it. I hope y'all see that. Boom, boom, boom. Let us take it a little further. For those of you who live in New York, let's go ahead and just drop that on you one time. For the one time, did you know that there is a swastika city in New York? Oh, you're gonna wake up. You're gonna wake up tonight. Somebody said, what? Somebody was sitting on their pillow like this. What? Hell, hold on. What? Did you know there's a swastika city in New York? Did you know that they voted to keep the name swastika in New York back in 2020? They voted to keep the name because they said we are keeping the name in remembrance of the original definition, which is in Sanskrit, which is Hindu or Indian, which means good fortune. We're not doing this because of Hitler. They took it and they stole it. Did you know that there's a swastika city in Canada? Really? Mr. Greenblatt. Mr. Greenblatt. Word? So Kanye putting up the swastika. Now, context does matter here. I don't know what Kanye meant when he put up the swastika. Maybe he did understand the original purpose of the whole swastika, which has been used by melanated people all across the planet. Let's make this clear. All across the planet for thousands of years and had nothing to do with Hitler. So again, let's kill that noise. Let's kill that. All right, let's end that. It don't belong to the Nazis. It never did. They stole it. But when he put it up, I don't know what the intent was behind it. So I can't say. Yes, it was because he understood the original definition in Sanskrit, meaning good fortune, and he did it because of the Hindus, and he did it because it was all of symbol of good fortune and good faith and peace. I don't know what's stolen. It did have one of the greatest purposes behind it in Riza, which is why there are cities named after it, which is why the Navajo tribe uses the swastika as one of its primary symbols within its tribe. Did you know that? I believe it wasn't until 1941 or 1942 that Phoenix, or Arizona generally, removed the symbols, the swastika, because of what was happening after World War II. But the Navajo tribe uses the swastika as one of its primary symbols and has been doing that long before Hitler. Did you know that? Type in Navajo tribe. Type in Navajo tribe. Okay, let's continue. There's a swastika city in New York. There's a swastika city in Canada. Coca-Cola used to have the swastika on some of its materials when they were selling things. The Navajo tribe uses the swastika as one of its symbols. Can I go a little further? May I go a little further? Because I wanted to show you how many multiple cultures use the swastika. We'll mention some, but I first want to show you. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully you can see this. If you can, yeah, there you go. On YouTube. I'm going to show you on Instagram right now, but on YouTube, do you see these? Do you see all these different nations, cultures that have used the swastika? All of them are older than the Nazis. Let's make that clear. Let's look at this. We are here on Instagram now. Look at these nations. Look at these nations. Look at these cultures that have been using the swastika symbol for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And let me go ahead and read off this. So get this stigma off of it. Move him out the way. And let that happen. The Hindus have a type of swastika. In Ghana, there is a variation of a swirled type of swastika. The Jains have a form of swastika. 10,000 BC, they had swastikas in in pairs of 4. In Ethiopia, the swastika is used. That's what the one is in Ethiopia in particular. That's the one, matter of fact, here. The Hindus and Ethiopians, this is how theirs looks. Those are both swastikas. Hindus and Ethiopians, swastikas. Boom. Hindus and Ethiopians, swastikas. Let's continue. In China, they have swastikas. The Aztecs have their version of the swastika. Armenians have the variations of the swastika. Would shock you that even in the Jewish community, they have a version of a swastika. Right here. We're just educating. That's a swastika. That's a swastika in the Jewish community. And I don't know exactly which area of the Jewish community. In Tibet, that's the Tibetan swastika. That's the Tibetan swastika. In Finland, they have one that goes in 4 directions. The Celtic swastika, the Greek swastika. In Bali, their version of the swastika, that's in Bali. That's in Bali, their version of the swastika. Let's see, almost done. In Asia, the swastika. Christians, some older Christians, and especially Ethiopian Christians too. Let's make that clear. That's the version of the swastika for them. That's the version of the swastika for them. Ninjas, even the swastika that they have. In Japan, that is their version of the swastika. A lot of these, I've seen a lot of these symbols. These are considered swastikas. In Japan, that's the green one there. In Spain, their version of the swastika. There may be a little change. It may be a little more rounder on the edges. It may be a little shorter on the edges. The Navajo tribe. All they added was some arrows. Think about that. The Navajo, prior to the Nazis, the Navajo tribes. Boom. With theirs, and I think, the Hopi, much older than the Nazis. In Islam, in Peru. Look at this. In Peru and in Islam. Really quick, I'm just harping on this to give you some examples of swastikas. Y'all see that? Okay. And the last 2 that I'm going to show is the Hopi and in Vietnam. These are swastikas, just to become educated. Nothing to do with Hitler. Nothing to do with Nazis. Okay, all right. So to that point, when it comes to bringing up Kanye, putting up swastikas, we hear you to the pain of what your people have suffered under a man that stole the symbol. We get that. However, the symbol itself ain't got nothing to do with them. They stole it. So those people over there, they ain't got nothing to do with all of the original members of the human family all across the planet who've been using it for thousands of years. I just wanted to go ahead and put that in context. Again, I don't know how Kanye was using it, but I wanted to make sure we educated all of you so that you knew there's far more to those symbols than some Nazis. All right, let's get that clear. It's like saying it's more lies.
Wow. This is really good, fam. I just wanted to stop it right there. It's halfway through, and we will bring the other half to you on Wednesday. I thank you for being here. If you have any comments or you want to come up and talk about this, The only thing I ask is that when you come up in the backstage, have your camera on. And then before I bring you up, you'll be able to turn your camera back off. So I'm about to drop the link now. That's if you want to talk about it. If not, that's fine. Because y'all know I'm a man of few words. So we can pick this up. This is a very good spot. It'll be easier for you to remember where we were. And also, you can always go back and take a look at tonight's, rewatch it. All right, so I don't see anyone coming up. I want to bid you all a good night and thank you for joining Truth Be Told. We love you and we'll see you on Wednesday. Peace and blessings to you all.